Chapter 1058. The black liquid had merged perfectly with the blade and was under his control. Did that mean he could use the black liquid to build seals inside the blade? If he could, as long as he built enough seals, the Pan Mountain blade could return to its original quality, or even surpass it. This meant that from now on, the Pan Mountain blade would become a personal weapon that he could change its quality to his will. If this could be done, it would be a great help to Lu Yi. Lu Yi had always been worried about one thing. That was to see how far the Pan Mountain saber could accompany him as he grew stronger. This was also the reason why most weapon cultivators felt awkward. Weapon cultivators had very high requirements for their personal weapons. After a long period of companionship, growth, and killing enemies, the weapon cultivator would be able to communicate with his weapon. With the Pan Mountain saber in hand, Lu Yi would be able to display his full strength. It was the same for other weapon cultivators. However, if he were to switch to another weapon, not only would his strength be weakened, but it would also affect his strength. When powerful cultivators fought, any external influence could be fatal. Therefore, Lu Yi would rather spend more contribution points to upgrade his Pan Shan saber than change to a long saber. If he wanted to change, there were plenty of long saber-type magic tools in the War Merit Pavilion that he could use. However, the Pan Mountain blade's foundation was too weak. It was originally a low-grade spiritual weapon. It could be upgraded to a high-grade spiritual weapon or even a magic weapon, but could it be upgraded to a high-grade spiritual treasure? Maybe, maybe not. The process of upgrading the Pan Mountain blade was extremely risky. If the upgrade failed, the Pan Mountain blade might shatter. At that time, even if Lu Yi found a tailor-made Pan Mountain blade, it wouldn't be the Pan Mountain blade anymore. It would need to be nurtured and reconnected with. Especially since Lu Ye's cultivation was increasing rapidly, the Pan Mountain blade was upgrading at a high rate. This increased the risk of future upgrade. He was now in the Spirit Sea realm. The Pan Mountain blade wasn't suitable for him anymore. It was time to upgrade it again. His original plan was to wait until he was free to deal with this matter himself and accumulate more experience. There were too many uncertainties if he always went to the Tianji treasury to upgrade the Pan Mountain blade. He couldn't be sure how much effort they put into upgrading the Pan Mountain blade. Upgrading one's cultivation would lead to all sorts of problems that needed to be dealt with. However, the unforeseen event before Lu Yi saw a possibility. If his guess was correct, then he wouldn't have to worry about upgrading the Pan Mountain saber anymore. He could change the quality of the Pan Mountain saber at any time, making it more suitable for his current realm. After thinking about it for a moment, Lu Yi felt that it should be feasible. The fact that the black liquid that made up the soul-severing blade could be controlled at will was a signal in itself. After making up his mind, Lu Yi channeled his divine will into the Pan Shan saber. To control the black liquid, one had to rely on one's own divine sense. This was something that Lu Yi had already verified just now. Urging spiritual energy was useless. With a surge of his spiritual will, the black liquid inside the Pan Mountain saber turned into tiny yin and yang elements, quickly forming a spiritual pattern. Withdrawing his divine sense, the spirit rune was fixed inside the Pan Mountain saber. Because it had already fused with the Pan Mountain saber, it didn't cause any damage to the inside of the saber. This was a restriction. It was really feasible. Lu Ye's interest was piqued and he continued to work. After a while, the Pan Mountain saber had 9 additional restrictions. It was a low-grade spiritual weapon. He tried to channel his spiritual energy into the saber, and the restrictions operated smoothly, perfectly displaying their effects. After fiddling with the saber for a while, Lu Yi dispersed the restrictions. Just now, it was just an experiment. Now that he was sure that the idea was feasible, he had to plan it well. The foundation of restrictions in a spiritual weapon was the spiritual pattern. A sharpness spiritual pattern was a restriction, and a consolidation spiritual pattern was also a restriction. Their effects were different. Spiritual weapons of the same quality could be heavier, sharper, or more elegant. It wasn't just because of the different materials used to refine them, but also because of the proportion of restrictions inside. The more consolidation restrictions there were, the sturdier the spiritual weapon would be. The more sharpness there were, the sharper the spiritual weapon would be. Lu Yi had to consider how to match the different types of restrictions. In the past, when the Pan Mountain Saber was being upgraded, he would look for Master Yu and simply state his requirements. Then, Master Yu would do whatever he wanted. Whether the finished product was good or bad, whether it could satisfy his requirements, or whether it was to his liking, all depended on Master Yu's skills. Myriad worlds Daluo. However, it was different now. What he was doing now was equivalent to customizing a weapon for himself. Only he himself knew what he needed the most. All along, Lu Ye's requirements for the Pan Mountain Saber were to be heavy. After all, he was going to use the saber in close combat. If it wasn't heavy enough, it would break easily. Therefore, he had to have more consolidation restrictions to ensure that the Pan Mountain Saber wouldn't be damaged in battle. He also had to have sharpness. Although he would activate the sharpness spiritual pattern to strengthen the saber, it wouldn't be good if the Pan Mountain Saber itself wasn't sharp enough. In the future, he would have to fight with Divine Sea Realm cultivators. At this level of cultivation, he would be very protective of himself. A weapon that wasn't sharp enough wouldn't be of much use in battle. Heavy pressure was a good thing. It had to be added, and the quantity couldn't be too small. Although the Pan Mountain Saber wasn't light, it wasn't heavy either. However, if the heavy pressure spiritual pattern was activated in battle, it was clearly a slash, but after receiving the attack, one would find that it was as heavy as a mountain. Could one block it? Of course, the reality wouldn't be so exaggerated. However, the existence of the heavy pressure restriction would definitely make Lu Yi more powerful in battle. He would be able to unleash his physical strength to a greater extent. Thorns could be used. Sometimes it would be difficult to deal effective damage to a strong enemy. The existence of the thorns restriction could turn a small injury into a big injury. Could he add restrictions like lightning attraction or golden arc to the Pan Mountain Saber? It was clearly a slash, but if it was activated with lightning attraction technique and golden arc slash, it seemed to be able to catch the enemy off guard. Lu Yi found that there were too many restrictions to choose from. The source came from his talent tree. Now, there were a total of 40 spiritual patterns activated on his talent tree. Although many of them weren't suitable to be built into weapons, there were still some that were suitable. After pondering for a long time, he finally abandoned some of his fancy ideas. The restrictions within weapons were the same as what cultivators learned. They were all about quality and not complexity. If he were to make so many restrictions, he would just be dividing up the ratio of restrictions for no reason. It might not be of much use. If he really wanted to activate a spell, Lu Yi could do it himself. There was no need to waste the restrictions on the Pan Mountain Saber. In the end, he decided to use the Pan Mountain Saber. The restrictions within the Pan Mountain Saber focused on sharpness, supplemented by heavy pressure, and added 2 thorns. He immediately got to work. With a surge of his spiritual sense, he controlled the black liquid within the saber to construct restrictions. Time passed. The spiritual patterns that Lu Yi chose were all activated on his talent tree. Constructing them was easy and didn't take much effort at all. Controlling the black liquid was even easier. With the combination of the two, the Pan Mountain Saber's quality increased as the number of restrictions increased. Low-grade spiritual weapon, middle-grade, high-grade, supreme-grade, low-grade magic weapon, middle-grade magic weapon. In just a short while, he was done. Carefully looking at the Pan Mountain Saber on his lap, it didn't seem to have changed at all. It was still as black as ink, simple and unadorned. However, compared to before, the Pan Mountain Saber had undergone a complete transformation. Although the Pan Mountain Saber from before was a magic weapon, It was only a low-grade magic weapon of the lowest quality. It contained 72 restrictions. After all, the last time Lu Yi upgraded the Pan Mountain Saber was when it was still in the Cloud River realm. Cloud River realm cultivators couldn't use items of too high quality. In the entire True Lake realm, he didn't upgrade the Pan Mountain Saber. Strictly speaking, the Pan Mountain Saber couldn't keep up with his cultivation anymore. Now, a total of 180 restrictions were hidden within the Pan Mountain Saber. This saber that had followed Lu Yi everywhere had finally been upgraded to a supreme-grade magic weapon. One more step and it would be a spiritual treasure. Actually, Lu Yi could also upgrade the Pan Mountain Saber to a spiritual treasure. After all, it was a simple matter for him to construct a few more spiritual patterns. The reason why he hadn't done so was because he needed to familiarize himself with the process. The upgrade from a low-grade magic weapon to a spiritual treasure was too big. It would definitely affect his ability to unleash his full strength. The Pan Mountain Saber's quality was just right. Furthermore, the quality of the Pan Mountain Saber was also a problem. The current Pan Mountain Saber was made by Master Yu. Although she added some materials when she refined it, it was only enough to increase the quality of the Pan Mountain Saber to the point where it could bear the weight of magic weapon restrictions. If Lu Yi really upgraded the Pan Mountain Saber to a spiritual treasure, the current quality of the Pan Mountain Saber might not be enough. He didn't want the Pan Mountain Saber to suddenly break in the middle of an intense battle. It was easy to solve this problem. He only needed to reforge it and find more precious materials to improve the quality of the Pan Mountain Saber. Lu Yi could do this himself. It wouldn't be too late for him to do it in the future. He picked up the Pan Mountain Saber and poured his spiritual energy into it. He immediately felt the difference in the Pan Mountain Saber. The consumption of his spiritual energy was more than 3 times greater than before. This was because the number of restrictions within the saber had increased. Activating those restrictions required a large amount of spiritual energy. This would undoubtedly make it easier for him to unleash his full strength. On the pitch-black blade of the Pan Mountain Saber, there was a layer of aura that was hard to detect. It was the aura of sharpness. The restrictions that Lu Yi had placed in the Pan Mountain Saber this time were quite sharp. Once activated, the saber would naturally become sharp. Looking at the Pan Mountain Saber, Lu Yi was extremely satisfied. This was truly a case of there can be no construction without destruction. The items in the War Merit Pavilion were truly fair. The 500,000 battle merits were worth it. If Lu Yi had known that the soul-severing saber had such a special characteristic, he wouldn't have hesitated even if it was 1,000,000. Chapter 1059. Battle merits were something that could be obtained in a sustainable manner. However, there was only one soul-slashing blade. How could Lu Yi know which was more important? Now, as long as the material of the Pan Mountain blade met the requirements, he could add more restrictions to improve its quality. This would save him the trouble of finding people to upgrade it in the future. Moreover, this blade had the ability to injure the divine soul. This was the rarest thing. Lu Yi wanted to find someone to test his blade on. For a weapon cultivator like him, he was always itching to test his blade when his weapon had improved by leaps and bounds. However, considering his current identity as Li Tai Bai, he could only give up. Lin Yu was very efficient. The next day, she brought the appointment order from the Myriad Demon City. Li Tai Bai was appointed as the Junior Pass Lord of the Dark Moon Forest Pass to assist in guarding the pass. Lu Yi did not check his Myriad Demon's Ridge battlefield mark. Once it was activated, it would only last for a few hours. However, he believed that if he really checked it, there would definitely be changes to his status. Under normal circumstances, even if Lu Yi had reached the Divine Sea Realm, he was not qualified to be the Junior Pass Lord. This was because he did not have any achievements to show and did not make any substantial contributions to the Myriad Demon's Ridge. He could not even meet the requirements of a military rank. Now that the situation in the 9 states was changing, Both the Hautian Alliance and the Myriad Demons Ridge had changed some of their old rules. They were more inclined to do things at their own discretion. Lin Yu could not do anything alone at the Dark Moon Forest Pass. Coincidentally, she caught a wild Divine Sea Realm cultivator and asked her to act as a guarantor. The Myriad Demons City naturally agreed. Now they needed people everywhere. Although a newly promoted Divine Sea Realm cultivator was nothing, he was still a Divine Sea Realm cultivator. Lu Yi could not help but sigh. He was only the leader of a small team at the Hautian Alliance. He had not been heard from for 2 years and was even rudely dismissed. However, he was entrusted with an important task at the Myriad Demons Ridge and became the junior pass lord of a pass. In the Dark Moon Forest Pass, he was only second to one person and above everyone else. Life was really unpredictable. Of course, he also knew that this was a special situation. A team of cultivators encountered some trouble 400 miles east. There are Divine Sea Realm insects there. We need you to go there. After giving the appointment order, Lin Yu ordered Lu Yi without hesitation. That was what the two of them at the Spirit Sea Realm had to do. The appearance of the insect plague was a great calamity for the 9 regions, but for many cultivators, it was a sumptuous feast. As long as they survived this great calamity, they could continuously obtain military merits and quickly improve their cultivation. This was an opportunity that they had never had before. Therefore, whether it was the Hautian Alliance or the Myriad Demons Ridge, many cultivators were trying their best to kill the insects. Firstly, it was to protect the stability of the 9 regions. Secondly, it was for themselves. Most of the cultivators in the Dark Moon Forest Pass were scattered outside, looking for insectoids to kill. The few who stayed behind were either resting or recuperating. They would leave soon. This was impossible in the past. After all, the Shocking Waves Lake Pass of the Hautian Alliance was just 1,000 miles away. If their own defensive power became weak, it would be easy for the enemy to take advantage of them. However, under the influence of the current situation, both sides had tacitly stopped their large-scale attacks. Hence, even though Dark Moon Forest Pass's defense was weak, they did not have to worry about being ambushed by Shocking Waves Lake Pass. Of course, small-scale conflicts were unavoidable. As the Spirit Sea Realm cultivators guarding the pass, they did not have to take action under normal circumstances. However, if their subordinates discovered a Spirit Sea Realm insectoid and were unable to deal with it, they would need to take action to kill it. It was also because of this that Lin Yu was extremely tired recently. In name, she was the Great Mountain Pass's lord and enjoyed boundless glory. However, in reality, she was running around saving people. Now that she finally found a strong man, she naturally needed Lu Yi to take care of it. Firstly, she really needed to rest. Secondly, she wanted to test Lu Ye's strength. When Li Tai Bai was at the 3rd Order True Lake Realm, he could instantly kill a 7th Order True Lake Realm cultivator. She once thought that he was a rising star who could rival Sect Exterminating Yi. Now that he had reached the Spirit Sea Realm, his strength was definitely not weak. Dealing with a Spirit Sea Realm insectoid shouldn't be a problem. Lu Yi could only obey the Great Mountain Pass's lord's orders. Furthermore, even without this order, he had to make a trip out. He could not stay at the Dark Moon Forest Pass forever. Without any delay, a streak of sword light shot out. Lu Yi had already shot into the air, heading east. After reaching the Spirit Sea Realm, his flying speed had increased by a lot. Not to mention, Lu Yi was now flying on his sword. Along the way, there were occasionally insectoids blocking his path. His figure did not stop. The sword gored at his waist slashed out with sword chi, cutting the insectoids in half. Their corpse blood splattered everywhere. A few hundred kilometers was covered in a short time. Looking down from the sky, a large number of insectoids were gathered below. These insectoids looked like spiders, but only in terms of shape. This was because the most obvious sign of the insectoids was the thick shell on their bodies. No matter what form they were in, it was the same. Ordinary spiders did not have such a shell. These insectoids were not small. Each of them was the size of a baby. They crawled quickly on the ground, spitting out spider silk from their mouth. A group of more than 10 people was surrounded in the middle, unable to advance or retreat. These people were not weak. Most of them were in the true lake realm. A few of them were in the cloud river realm. Under normal circumstances, even if they could not defeat these insectoids, escaping would not be a problem. However, a giant spider web in the sky cut off their hopes of escape. There was a house-sized insectoid crawling on the spider web. Its entire body emitted a ferocious aura. Some cultivators had already been killed and were being eaten by this insectoid. In this situation, it was obvious that a large insectoid had brought its offspring out to hunt. In the end, it bumped into this group of cultivators. The small spiders were in charge of surrounding the cultivators, not giving them any chance to escape. The large spider was in charge of feasting. When Lu Yi arrived, the defensive perimeter of the cultivators was less than 300 feet away. It could be said that they were in danger. On the spider web, the large spider had also finished eating the cultivators and was about to move on to another target. It seemed like this insectoid was quite particular. It knew how to trap its prey here so that it could eat fresh ones at any time. As if sensing Lu Ye's aura, the insectoid instincts made the large spider raise its compound eyes to look in Lu Ye's direction. Then, its mouthpart squirmed and a strand of spider's silk shot towards Lu Yi. The trapped cultivators also saw Lu Yi. One of them shouted, "Hold on, someone is coming to save us." As soon as he said that, the spider's silk suddenly turned into a spider web and tightly wrapped around Lu Yi. The face of the cultivator who shouted turned green. He did not recognize Lu Yi, nor did he know the background of this divine ocean realm cultivator. He only felt that this guy was too impulsive. As a divine ocean realm cultivator, he rashly approached the battlefield. Now that he was trapped, he would most likely die. One had to know that the spider silk was poisonous. However, just as this thought flashed through his mind, a ball of fire suddenly appeared in midair. The fire rolled and retracted. Lu Ye's figure reappeared. The spider web that wrapped around him was also burned clean. Then, there was the clear sound of a sword chime. A few sword lights flew out from the sword gourd, as if someone was waving a brush in the air. The sword lights turned into streaks of light and crossed the space where the big spider was. Calligraphy sword art. This was the sword Dao inheritance from the soaring dragon realm. Lu Yi had taught it to Li Baxian, so he could use it himself. Under the soaring dragon realm's origin imprint, he had an extremely strong sword cultivation foundation. Now that he had used the calligraphy sword art, even if the sword master of the North Profound Sword Sect came, he would have to praise him as a good sword cultivator. The shell on the large spider's body did not provide it with any protection. As Lu Ye's cultivation increased, the power of the sword gourd also increased greatly. Sword cultivators were known for their killing. Under these sword lights, the large spider's body immediately stiffened. However, the sword lights did not stop. Under Lu Ye's control, they flew into the swarm of insects. As they passed by silently, many insectoids fell one after another. When the sword lights slowly dissipated, the large encirclement had been cleared out. The small spiders were dead or injured. The large spider hanging in the spider web in the sky was also torn apart at this moment. Corpse blood spilled everywhere. The dozen or so cultivators were all shocked. They all used their methods to push out. The death of the large spider had a great impact on the small spiders. They became chaotic, and the more they attacked, the less of a threat they would pose to the cultivators. Lu Yi strolled in the sky casually. Occasionally, a sword light would shoot out from the sword gourd. However, he could clearly see that the dozen or so people below did not seem to be in the same group. Originally, they were trapped and could still gather together when they were in danger. However, as the biggest danger was eliminated, The group of people split into two groups. Lu Yi immediately understood that some of them were cultivators from the Myriad Demons Ridge. The other group should be from the Grand Heaven Alliance. It was not new for cultivators from the two factions to work together. In some of the secret realms in the Cloud River battlefield, there were precedents of cultivators from the two factions working together. The Great Genetic Age. However, that was because of the circumstances. In the Land of the Nine States, it was very rare to see such a thing. With more than 10 people working together and Lu Yi supporting them from the side, all the insects were killed in the time it took to burn a stick of incense. The two groups of people were panting, but they looked at Lu Yi in the sky cautiously and anxiously. The cultivators from the Grand Heaven Alliance did not know who he was, and the few cultivators from the Myriad Demons Ridge did not know who he was either. Lu Yi was too lazy to explain. He said casually, "Why are we still here? Are we waiting for the insects to counterattack?" The battle just now had caused quite a commotion. If there were any insects nearby, they would definitely be attracted. The two leaders of the two groups quickly bowed. "Thank you for saving us, sir." There was no need to figure out Lu Yi's background. Looking at his attitude, no matter which faction he was from, he had no intention of making things difficult for them. The two groups of people flew off in different directions and soon disappeared from sight. Lu Yi continued to move forward. He flew for another 100 miles before he pressed down on the sword light and flew into a crack in the ground below. After the great change in the Land of the Nine States, there were many such cracks in the ground. The insects crawled out from these cracks. Chapter 1060. When Lu Yi came in, he saw a large number of insects climbing up at a glance. He killed a circle and cleared out the nearby insects before finding a secluded place to summon his doppelganger. After a while, another figure that looked exactly like Lu Yi appeared. He took off the scarlet dragon battle robe and let his doppelganger wear it. He also took off the sword gourd from his waist and hung it on his doppelganger's waist. He also left 2 storage bags for his doppelganger to store some supplies. After everything was done, the doppelganger controlled the sword light and rushed out of the fissure, heading towards Dark Moon Forest Pass. The main body concealed itself and quietly left the fissure, heading towards Grand Sky City. Lu Yi's vision began to become strange as 2 different scenes appeared in his vision at the same time. Fortunately, Lu Yi had experienced this before, and now that he had reached the Divine Sea Realm, his divine sense was much stronger, so this change didn't affect him much. He was just doing 2 things at once. Lu Yi had a bad feeling. He had this feeling since yesterday, but it wasn't obvious at that time, so he didn't pay much attention to it. Today, this feeling had become much clearer. Lu Yi didn't know what was going on. He was sure that no one was watching him nearby, but he had this feeling that he was being watched. He didn't think it was an illusion. Now that he was in the Divine Sea Realm, his perception was much stronger than that of a true Lake Realm cultivator. Since he had this feeling, there must be a reason. It was hard to determine the source for the time being. After traveling a few dozen kilometers, Lu Yi removed his concealment and leaped into the air. Half an hour later, a streak of light flew straight towards this side. The person flying from this direction should be someone from Grand Sky Union. Judging from the other party's spirit energy fluctuations, he was at least in the 3rd Order Divine Sea Realm. Lu Yi didn't know who it was, so he avoided it slightly. It was common sense for those with lower cultivation to avoid those with higher cultivation when flying high in the sky. Naturally, the way to avoid was not fixed. One could lower their altitude or move left and right as they wished. Lu Yi chose to lower his altitude, but he didn't expect that when he lowered his altitude, the other party would also lower their altitude. The 2 figures quickly approached each other. Just as Lu Yi was about to dodge again, the other party spoke from afar. "Oh, is it Lu Yi, little friend Lu?" Lu Yi was slightly stunned. He didn't expect this person to know him, so he replied, "Yes." That person was a bit surprised. Little friend Lu has actually reached the divine sea realm. Congratulations! One Lu Yi frowned. How should I address you? This one is Clear Moon Sex Zhang Song. As he spoke, he raised his hand and waved it with his back facing Lu Yi, causing a dot of blue light to appear before her eyes. Lu Yi was still trying to figure out which sect the Pure Moon sect was. Only sects above the 3rd grade could produce a divine sea realm warrior. Although he didn't know much about the sects above the 3rd grade in the military province, he had at least heard of their names. There was no such thing as the Pure Moon sect above the 3rd rank. Unexpectedly, Zhang Song's speed suddenly increased, and he instantly appeared in front of Lu Yi. Spiritual qi and blood surged all over his body as he threw a punch at him. This fist was heavy and powerful. If it was Lu Yi who was still in the true lake stage, he definitely wouldn't have been able to receive it. This turn of events greatly surprised Lu Yi. When the other party showed the Haotian Alliance's battlefield imprint to him, he naturally felt that this person was on his side, so he instinctively lowered his guard. Lu Yi did lower his guard a bit, but because he always felt like he was being watched in the dark, he still maintained a bit of caution. He wasn't guarding against Zhang Song, but the enemy who might be hiding in the dark. This trace of vigilance gave him a chance to react quickly. With a clang, the Pan Mountain saber was unsheathed, and a sharp saber light was slashed out. With a boom, spiritual energy exploded, and a blast of air swept out. Both of them were shocked. Shock flashed across Zhang Song's face. He had approached Lu Yi unexpectedly and launched a sneak attack with a cultivation 2 levels higher than Lu Yi's. Logically speaking, it was impossible for him to miss. In order to ensure the success rate of his sneak attack, he even deliberately fabricated the Pure Moon sect to distract Lu Yi's attention. Who would have thought that after all this scheming, he still failed to achieve his goal? The moment he saw Lu Yi, he knew that the information was wrong. Lu Yi wasn't in the true lake stage, he had already reached the divine sea stage. However, because he felt that Lu Yi, a new divine sea stage cultivator, might not be able to display much strength, he continued with his plan. He thought that it would be easy, but who knew that he would kick an iron plate? Lu Yi's reaction was fast, and his saber was extremely agile. Moreover, the power transmitted from the saber couldn't be underestimated. How could a new divine sea stage cultivator have such strength? As he pondered, Lu Yi's second saber slashed down. Zhang Song hurriedly raised his arms, and his dense qi and spiritual energy converged to form a thick defense. Peak boom! Under the powerful force, Zhang Song felt that his opponent wasn't slashing down with a saber, but with a mountain. What made him even more uneasy was that this saber was a bit too sharp. His defense as a physique cultivator showed signs of being broken. The power of the upgraded mountain saber was vividly displayed at this moment. There were a total of 180 barriers and many heavy-pressure spirit inscriptions hidden within them. Every time Lu Yi's saber slashed down, not only did it contain his own strength, but it also contained the terrifying pressure formed by these heavy-pressure spirit inscriptions. With these two factors superimposed, it wasn't as simple as 1 + 1. Even Zhang Song, a physique cultivator, found it difficult to resist. The power of the mountain saber was only secondary to this effect. The most important factor was Lu Yi's own foundation. Lu Yi had spent more than half a year trying to break through from the true Lake Ninth Order to the Divine Sea. In the end, he had even taken the risk of diving deep into the Blood Sea in order to continuously accumulate his physical strength, but because he had already formed his divine sense, he had never been able to find an opportunity to break through. As a result, his physical strength had only grown stronger over time. If an average cultivator only needed to accumulate enough physical strength to fill a wine jug when they broke through to the Divine Sea stage, Lu Yi's physical strength had exceeded that of a wine jug when he reached the true Lake Ninth Order, the kind of wine jug that could hold 10 kilograms of wine. The process of breaking through to the divine sea stage was full of ups and downs, but after crossing that shackle, everything became clear. With a more solid foundation and a more tenacious foundation, the process of breaking through to the divine sea stage was completely different, bringing about earth-shaking changes in his strength, allowing Lu Yi to continue his previous ability to kill enemies above his own realm. Coupled with the reborn mountain saber, what did a trivial third-order divine sea cultivator count for? Coupled with the tempering of more than 70 old seniors over several months, Lu Yi didn't even know where his current limits were. Having seen the ferocious might of a fierce tiger, how could he care less about a dog's baring its fangs? When the first saber slashed down, it could barely be considered a draw because Lu Yi had acted hastily. By the second saber strike, the protective barrier around Zhang Song's body was shaking violently, and his vitality was tumbling. Lu Ye's saber was incredibly fast, and it was followed by a third saber strike. Like a balloon being punctured, Zhang Song's protective barrier of blood qi and spirit energy was directly cut open. The sharp mountain saber cut a bloody line across his crisscrossed arms, and under the tremendous pressure, Zhang Song's body was sent plummeting downwards. Zhang Song showed a look of horror. Not only was he shocked by the terrifying strength that Lu Yi had suddenly erupted with, but he was even more horrified by what he was feeling at this moment. He was a body cultivator, so his physique was powerful and his recovery ability was powerful. At his level of cultivation, his physique was the most powerful thing he could rely on. In a confrontation between cultivators in the same realm, there was basically no cultivator who could destroy his physique. Even the mountain saber with 180 spirit arrays couldn't do anything to him. All it did was leave a bloody gash on his arms. This kind of flesh wound was nothing to a body cultivator with thick skin and thick physique, and could be easily healed. However, the feeling of being injured made Zhang Song's heart beat wildly. Because the moment the mountain saber cut him, his soul actually felt pain, as if an invisible saber had cut into his spirit sea. But he didn't notice any signs of Lu Yi urging his spiritual energy. As his body fell, Lu Yi followed him like a shadow, his saber light enveloping him. Zhang Song roared, his face full of humiliation. He had launched a sneak attack with a cultivation 2 minor realms higher than his own, yet he had been beaten. For a hot-tempered body cultivator, this was absolutely intolerable. He wanted to fight back, but he had lost the initiative, so there was no room for him to fight back. The only thing he could do was protect himself with all his might. But every time Lu Ye's saber came down, his soul would hurt, making it difficult for him to urge his divine sense to fight with Lu Ye's soul. Hong, Zhang Song's body slammed heavily on the ground like a meteorite falling from the sky, creating a huge crater in the ground. For a moment, he was dizzy. His soul was in turmoil, making it difficult for him to concentrate. He really couldn't understand what the other party had done to him. Why was there no fluctuation of spiritual energy, but his soul was damaged? He knew that this mission was a failure. He was no match for the other party, so what was the point of talking about the mission? What he needed to do now was to escape quickly and report the news. Dust and smoke rose, turning into a natural cover. Zhang Song's qi and blood surged, and he instantly fled in a direction. However, Lu Yi seemed to have foreseen this and blocked his way, holding a saber in his hand and thrusting it forward. Saber light filled the sky like falling stars, enveloping Zhang Song. With a sizzling sound, Zhang Song's body shook again, and dozens of bloody holes appeared on the surface of his body. His forward figure couldn't help but stop and tumble backwards. As expected of a body cultivator, his skin was rough and his flesh thick. If it were Lu Xiu's fragile body, these injuries would have been fatal, but Zhang Song looked miserable, but his life was not in danger. Stabilizing his body with difficulty, he half knelt on the ground. The pain in his soul became more and more obvious, as if his entire soul was being torn apart, making his expression look extremely terrifying. Lu Yi raised his left hand, and as his spirit chi surged, a strange scene appeared. The blood flowing from Zhang Song's wounds seemed to have turned into living creatures, climbing all over his body, turning into bloody lines in the blink of an eye, covering his entire body. Chapter 1061. As Lu Yi clenched his fist, the strands of blood suddenly tightened, binding Zhang Song tightly like a rope. Blood Spirit Bind. A type of Blood Dao secret technique. It had to be said that many of the blood race's secret techniques were extremely strange and mysterious. They originated from their bloodline inheritance and could not be used by non-blood. Lu Yi had refined a drop of saint blood and used it to break through to the divine sea realm. The power of his talent tree had burned away the strange power in the saint blood that was enough to transform Lu Yi into a blood race cultivator, allowing him to obtain an incomplete blood race bloodline inheritance. His eyelids drooped as he raised his blade and came before Zhang Song. His eyelids drooped as he asked, "Why?" He couldn't understand why this person, who was obviously from Grand Heaven Alliance, would attack him. Moreover, he had only returned to the 9 states 2 days ago. Was it a coincidence? Unlikely. This person seemed to have come specifically for him. However, he obviously didn't know that Lu Yi had broken through to the divine sea realm, which was why he was so surprised when they met. Since there was no enmity between them, there must be someone behind the scenes. On the Hidden Sky Alliance's side, the only one who wanted to kill him on the surface was Lu Yueme. However, she had been severely taught a lesson by the sect master last time, so she might not have the courage to do so now. Zhou Kuei could barely be considered half a person, and Shang Yibei had even ordered a third-order divine sea realm cultivator to kill him. It wasn't that Lu Yi was looking down on him, but that he was simply stating the facts. Besides the two of them, who else could have a grudge with him? What Lu Yi was more concerned about was whether the bad feeling he was feeling was related to this Zhang Song. He had to figure it out. In fact, he could activate a little of the Divine Spirit Rune to explore the whole story, but ever since he activated this Spirit Rune in the blood refining realm, Lu Yi decided that he would not use it unless he had no other choice, because that feeling was simply too uncomfortable. Zhang Song was still struggling, but he was bound by the blood spirit bind and his soul was damaged, so how could he have the strength to break free? His heart sank, knowing that not only had he failed his mission, but his fate was also in danger. He really hadn't expected that Lu Yi's ability would be so great. He thought that with his third-order divine sea realm cultivation, it would be a piece of cake to capture Lu Yi. In the end, he was captured alive. In a cultivator's battle, defeating, killing, and capturing were 3 completely different concepts. Each step was more difficult than the last. Lu Yi being able to capture him alive so easily meant that his strength far surpassed the third-order divine sea realm. What was even more difficult for Yang Kai to accept was that he didn't even know where this person's limits were. Feeling the sharp aura of the long saber against his neck, Zhang Song chuckled. "You want to know why? Come and ask in the Yellow Springs." Lu Yi's expression changed, and he hurriedly urged his divine sense to form an invisible shockwave that blasted towards Zhang Song. However, it was still too late. With a soft puff, it was as if something had exploded in Zhang Song's mind. Then, his neck tilted and he fell limply to the ground. Lu Yi hurriedly stepped forward and checked on Zhang Song's condition. He found that his life force had indeed been cut off. This scene seemed familiar. It reminded him of his experience in the Chen family of Mtmi 2 years ago. Back then, the patriarch of the Chen family, Chen Tianchui, had strangely died in front of him. Later, he was captured by Yu Daiwei and brought to a nameless sealed world. When he chatted with Taishan, he used words to test him and confirmed that the Chen family was from Taishan. It was now clear who the mastermind behind the scenes was. Back in the Chen family, his team was inexplicably attacked. In the end, he summoned the Dragon Emperor and went on a killing spree to resolve the crisis. Now, after returning to the 9 states for 2 days, someone came to find trouble with him for no reason. It seemed that Tai Shan already knew that he had returned to the 9 states. That's right. Back then, he had exchanged the battlefield imprint with Yu Daiwei. At that time, he was thinking of using it to locate Yu Daiwei's location. Because he was going to cause trouble in the nameless secret realm, if he could contact Yu Daiwei through the imprint, it meant that she was in the secret realm. If Yu Daiwei's mark couldn't contact her, it meant that she had left the sealed world. Then, Lu Yi could put down his scruples and do whatever he wanted. But he didn't expect that he would be used by the other party today. Yu Daiwei obviously found that his battlefield marks could be contacted, so she confirmed that he had returned to the 9 states. But perhaps she couldn't come in time, so she sent Zhang Song to intercept him. But whether it was her or Zhang Song, they both underestimated his strength, which led to Zhang Song's death. This was human nature. 2 years ago, Lu Ye's cultivation was only at the 5th order true lake realm. Even if Zhang Song confirmed that he had reached the divine sea realm when he saw him, he would not take him seriously. As a result, he was beaten to a pulp by Lu Yi in a single confrontation. The situation was generally clear, but there was still one thing that Lu Yi couldn't understand. What method did Tai Shan use to control Zhang Song? He would rather die than say a word. That day, the Chun family was the same. Dao soldiers might be loyal to Tai Shan, but whether it was the Chun family or Zhang Song, they were obviously not Dao soldiers. This kind of method that could make his subordinates face death with equanimity was too inconceivable. The source should be in their minds, because whether it was Chun Tianchui or Zhang Song, Lu Yi heard a slight sound in their minds before they died. He quickly squatted down and reached out to touch Zhang Song's forehead, using his divine sense to investigate. But he couldn't find anything. Zhang Song was dead, but the feeling of being watched by someone didn't disappear. Instead, it became stronger and stronger. It seemed that the source of this feeling wasn't Zhang Song. If it wasn't Zhang Song, then it had to be Tai Shan or Yu Daiwei. It was most likely the latter. Tai Shan was the mastermind behind the scenes, and there were many capable people under his command. It was impossible for him to do everything himself. Did he use the tracking disc? Lu Yi was enlightened. Although he had been tracked by others before, his cultivation was still low at that time, unlike now. Because of his divine sea realm cultivation, his strong foundation temperature made his perception extremely sharp, so he was able to sense the trace of tracking in his mind. The stronger the feeling was, the closer the other party was to him. Lu Ye's fighting spirit soared. To be honest, the battle with Zhang Song just now hadn't been enjoyable. After he reached the divine sea realm, although he had been fighting every day, it was just a one-sided lesson from the old seniors. The old seniors of the blood refinement realm all knew the principle that jade couldn't be made into anything without being carved, so they didn't hold back at all. As long as it was within Lu Ye's tolerance, they were as fierce as they could be. No matter who he fought, Lu Yi was beaten until he was dizzy. However, the old seniors had a sense of propriety and wouldn't harm his foundation. Even if he was seriously injured, it wouldn't affect him from being hammered the next day. Immortal would adventure in such a big environment. Lu Yi didn't know where his limit was, because he lost every battle. After returning to the 9 provinces, he killed 2 divine sea realm cultivators. The insect race was finished with a single blow. There was no room for him to fight. The battle with Zhang Song was also a quick and decisive one. He was now in urgent need of a suitable whetstone to test his strength. A cultivator who didn't know his limit wasn't a qualified cultivator. In the future, he would encounter all kinds of dangers. If he couldn't judge his own strength clearly, he would easily fall into some dangerous situations. Therefore, if Yu Daiwei really came to him, it would be a great opportunity. As for whether he could beat her or not, it was no longer within Lu Ye's consideration. If he couldn't beat her, then so be it. There was nothing to be ashamed of. There was a gap in their cultivation. He was still young. Although Yu Daiwei looked young, she was actually much older than him. There would come a time when he would surpass her. Moreover, if he couldn't beat her, he could run. Among the many secret skills of the blood race, the blood escape art was unparalleled. Once he used it, Yu Daiwei could only eat his dust. Since he had made up his mind, Lu Yi decided not to leave. He collected Zhang Song's belongings and put the corpse into his storage bag. A divine sea realm cultivator of the Grand Sky Alliance was actually a subordinate of Tai Shan. This was a big deal. He had to bring him back to Grand Sky City and report this to the chief. If there was one Zhang Song, would there be a second or a third? He didn't send a message to the chief or Gan Wudong. Now that the 9 states was in chaos, these two must be busy. There was no need to trouble them before he had full confidence in capturing the target. When Lu Yi was in the true lake realm, he would ask his elders for help when he was in danger. After all, he wasn't strong enough, so there was nothing he could do. But now that he was in the divine sea realm, how could he ask his elders for help every time? After waiting for half an hour, a stream of light rushed over from the distance. Yu Daiwei looked a little surprised because the development of the situation puzzled her. Although she was in the 8th Order Divine Sea Realm, it took her a lot of time to fly all the way from Thunder State to here. During this time, she found that Lu Yi was moving towards Grand Sky City through the guidance of the tracing disc. This forced her to dispatch Zhang Song to intercept him halfway. Otherwise, if Lu Yi entered Grand Sky City, she wouldn't have a chance to kill him. Logically speaking, there was no problem with Zhang Song taking action. How could a 3rd Order Divine Sea Realm cultivator go against a true Lake Realm cultivator? But the accident happened just like that. Zhang Song's battlefield mark suddenly collapsed, which undoubtedly meant that Zhang Song was dead. Subconsciously, she felt that there must be some kind of master hiding around Lu Yi, otherwise, Zhang Song wouldn't have died for no reason. A 3rd Order Divine Sea Realm cultivator wasn't so easy to kill. From a distance, she saw a figure standing on a barren peak below. Focusing her eyes, who else could it be but Lu Yi? Yu Daiwei immediately became vigilant. Looking around, she quickly spread out her divine sense. She was looking for the master hiding in the dark. Judging from Lu Yi's posture, it was obvious that he knew that someone was using the tracking disc to track his whereabouts, but he didn't leave. Instead, he waited quietly in the wilderness. This was extremely unusual. Yu Daiwei felt that an inescapable net had been set up here. He immediately came to a stop about 10 miles away from Lu Yi. She couldn't be blamed for being so cautious. It was just an accurate inference based on the information she had. On the barren peak, Lu Yi looked up calmly at Yu Daiwei, who was rushing over. Everything was as expected. This woman was using the tracing disc to track his whereabouts, so Zhang Song must have been sent by her. Chapter 1062. They were 10 kilometers apart. Lu Yi's eyes were calm, while Yu Daiwei was suspicious. She kept looking around, but she didn't find anything suspicious. On the contrary, there were traces of a battle where Lu Yi was. There was a big pit not far away, obviously caused by someone falling from the sky. There was also a lot of blood scattered on the ground. What are you looking for? Lu Yi held the saber in his hand and secretly gathered his strength. How did he die? Yu Daiwei didn't understand. Under her investigation, there didn't seem to be any strong people lying in ambush nearby. There were only 2 possibilities for this situation. One was that there really wasn't an ambush. The second possibility was that the person lying in ambush was the smoking ghost. At this moment, he was hiding his figure so she couldn't detect him. A ghost cultivator that she couldn't detect was not to be underestimated, so she became even more vigilant. I killed him. Although he didn't kill him directly, he was forced to his death. Yu Daiwei curled her lips. You? It wasn't that she looked down on Lu Yi, but it was just her thinking. 2 years ago, he was only at the 5th Order True Lake Realm. No matter how fast his cultivation speed was, how strong could he be now? Zhang Song was only at the third-order divine sea realm. How could he die at the hands of Lu Yi? Just me. As soon as Lu Ye's words fell, he exerted strength in his feet and the spirit energy around him surged. 2 deep footprints appeared on the ground as he rushed towards Yu Daiwei like lightning. As soon as he moved, the strength of his spirit energy immediately became obvious. Divine Sea Realm. Yu Daiwei was shocked. Just now, she thought that even if Lu Yi's cultivation had changed over the past 2 years, it couldn't have been much stronger. Now, she knew that he had actually reached the Divine Sea Realm. This was a big improvement. No wonder the High Lord said that this person was a person with great fortune. Sure enough, he couldn't be judged by common sense. Small Book Pavilion. In a moment of shock, the distance between them was already several kilometers. Yu Daiwei raised her hand and shot out an exquisite spell. Lu Yi had already guessed that she was a Dharma cultivator, so he chose to take the initiative to attack her. Spell cultivators had long arms, while weapon cultivators had short arms. The crux of their battle was distance. If they could not close the distance, then they would never be able to pose enough of a threat to the spell cultivator. However, once they were close enough, it would be the spell cultivator's turn to be embarrassed. The spell quickly arrived in front of Lu Yi. Lu Yi dodged it, but a spell cast by a powerful spell cultivator like Yu Daiwei was not something that could be easily avoided. The spells of Dharma cultivators were like imperial weapons. They could be controlled after being cast. If he really dodged it, then it was on purpose. 4 Dharma cultivators below the Divine Sea Realm, their control over their own Dharma spells was not perfect enough. However, once they reached the Divine Sea Realm, they would be able to control their Dharma spells with their spiritual will, which would lead to a qualitative change. Yu Daiwei didn't know how Lu Yi was able to break through to the Divine Sea Realm in such a short time, but in the end, he was just a first-order cultivator. He didn't have much experience in fighting, so he didn't understand the dangers of a Divine Sea Realm confrontation. After Lu Yi dodged the spell, she quickly circled around and chased after him. At the same time, she cast another spell at Lu Yi, attacking him from the front and back. "A little thing, you're so arrogant. Now you'll know how powerful this old lady is." Of course, she didn't use her full strength, only using less than a quarter of her strength. In her opinion, this was more than enough to take down Lu Yi, so she needed to reserve her strength to guard against any possible attacks. For this reason, she had already prepared a defensive spirit artifact, waiting for the ghost cultivator in the dark to appear. However, in the next moment she was shocked, because facing the second spell, Lu Yi showed no intention of dodging. Instead, he swung his saber down and with a bang, his spiritual energy became chaotic. Lu Yi's figure rushed out unscathed, his figure not slowing down, and he continued to close in on her. In the blink of an eye, he had closed another kilometer. Feeling the violent and overbearing aura in front of her and the strong sense of invasion, Yu Daiwei raised her hand again and cast a series of Dharma spells one after another. In the face of these attacks, Lu Yi only had one response, and that was to meet them head-on, cutting through the waves. In the blink of an eye, the Dharma spells were all ineffective and the two sides quickly closed in on each other. For the first time, Yu Daiwei's expression changed, because she found that she seemed to have greatly underestimated Lu Yi's strength. Logically speaking, with such a large gap in their cultivation levels, the methods she used should have been enough to make Lu Yi embarrassed, but this brat actually displayed strength that didn't belong to his cultivation level at all. None of the Dharma spells she cast were effective, and they were all cut down by the long saber in his hand. One had to know that even if she didn't use her full strength, this series of methods was enough to deal with ordinary Spirit Sea Realm cultivators, but Lu Yi treated it like it was nothing. What kind of freak was this? Although the difference in their cultivation levels was too great, Yu Daiwei really didn't dare to let Lu Yi get close to her. After all, she was a Dharma cultivator with a weak body. If a weapon cultivator got close to her, Even if the difference in strength between them was huge, it was still very risky. Not to mention, Lu Yi showed an extremely shocking sense of aggression after he made his move. She could completely imagine that once he got close to her, she would be greeted with a storm of attacks. She couldn't help but increase the strength of her attacks, and Lu Ye's speed finally slowed down. The Dharma spells coming at him head-on were the biggest resistance. At this moment, he was only a kilometer away from Yu Daiwei. At this distance, he could of course use Dharma spells to fight back with her. He was also now proficient in Blood Dao secret techniques, but it was meaningless. Although he could use many Blood Dao secret techniques, he hadn't practiced them before, so it was hard to say how much power he could display. Using his own shortcomings to fight against someone else's strengths, how stupid was that? His only thought was to find a way to get close to her. Yu Daiwei's heart was already in turmoil because she found that Lu Ye's claim that Zhang Song was killed by him was very likely true. With the strength Lu Yi had shown so far, it was indeed possible for him to kill Zhang Song, and this was obviously not his limit. If this was really the case, it meant that there was no ambush nearby at all, nor were there any terrifying ghost cultivators. She was just scaring herself. Yu Daiwei was furious. The last time she captured Lu Yi, she was still pinching a snail with her fingers, and the other party didn't even have the slightest temper. It had only been 2 years, but the opponent she could easily pinch had grown to this extent? Constantly increasing his strength, he gradually reached 70% of his strength and finally managed to intercept Lu Ye's advance. Yu Daiwei breathed a long sigh of relief. It hadn't been easy. A first-order Divine Sea Realm cultivator actually required her to use 70% of her strength to contend with him. If she told others about this, no one would believe her. But such an unimaginable thing had happened right under her nose, and she was experiencing it herself. She admired the High Lord's vision even more. Perhaps only such a person could help the High Lord achieve great things, right? But she knew that this little brat wasn't someone with a good temper. It wouldn't be easy for the High Lord to subdue such a person. Many thoughts flashed through her mind, but Lu Yi was constantly retreating in the storm of Dharma spells. Retreating was to get close. Retreating was a last resort. Between retreating and advancing, Lu Yi was unable to close the distance between him and Yu Daiwei. He didn't know how much strength Yu Daiwei was using, but it shouldn't be her full strength. But in front of such a powerful Divine Sea Realm cultivator, this was the limit of what he could do at the moment. He was less than half a kilometer away from Yu Daiwei. However, Lu Yi didn't panic and maintained a calm expression, forming an extremely obvious contrast with the aggressive aura around him. He had a lot of combat experience against Dharma cultivators. Among the 70 or so seniors in Blood Refining World, many were Dharma cultivators, such as Tofuji. He was naturally familiar with how to deal with the attacks of Dharma cultivators. If Zhang Song was a dog, then Yu Daiwei was a hunting hound. She couldn't be compared to a fierce tiger like Tofuji. Lu Yi could only be trampled by Tofuji because the gap in strength was too great, but months of tempering himself had already trained him to withstand pressure. One at the apex of his heart, a drop of blood essence suddenly exploded and Lu Ye's whole body was immediately covered in a thick blood mist. From a distance, he seemed to have turned into a blood man. On his chest, the blood-stained spirit tattoo that was rapidly forming was immediately activated. Lu Ye's already violent aura soared and even the space around him began to distort. The stalemate was broken in an instant. Lu Yi madly dashed forward as saber light flashed. Ah! Yu Daiwei was still shocked by Lu Ye's strength and didn't expect such a shocking change. With a cry of surprise, she no longer dared to hold back and pushed her already dense Dharma spells to the limit. This time, she really did use all her strength. However, she was still a step too late. The main reason was that Lu Ye's eruption was too sudden and she was completely unprepared. The distance of half a kilometer was directly shortened and all Dharma spells along the way exploded. Seeing the sharp blade coming down, Yu Daiwei no longer hesitated and activated the defensive spirit treasure she had prepared to deal with the ghost cultivator. An oval-shaped shield quickly hovered around her and blocked the mountain blades. Hong, her spirit chi became chaotic, and a deafening sound rang out. Yu Daiwei's figure staggered slightly as she saw Lu Ye's second slash coming down. Almost without hesitation, she blasted a soul secret technique at Lu Yi. She didn't want to use a soul secret technique on Lu Yi. Her mission this time was not to kill Lu Yi, but to capture Lu Yi again under the orders of the High Lord. She didn't want to use a soul secret technique on Lu Yi. Her mission this time was not to kill Lu Yi, but to capture Lu Yi again under the orders of the High Lord. If she used the methods of a Dharma cultivator, there was still a lot of room to maneuver, and she could control it perfectly. However, if she used a soul secret technique, there were too many things she couldn't control. If Lu Ye's soul was damaged and he became mentally retarded or his foundation was affected, then even if she captured Lu Yi, she wouldn't be able to explain it to the High Lord. However, plans could never keep up with changes, so using a soul secret technique was an instinctive counterattack. As soon as she used the soul secret technique, Yu Daiwei cursed inwardly and hurriedly held back a little. At the same time, Lu Yi seemed to see an invisible blade stabbing towards him, piercing into the depths of his soul. And then there was no more and then. His spirit sea rose and fell, feeling a slight pain, but it didn't affect him much and was quickly suppressed by the soul-suppressing pagoda. He slashed down with his blade, but it was blocked by the spirit treasure hovering around Yu Daiwei. It was as if his blade had cut into cotton, unable to exert any force. Immediately after, a huge force swept over. He blocked with his saber in front of him, but he was still sent flying. Chapter 1063. In midair, Lu Yi lowered his body and channeled his spiritual power to stabilize his body. Without any pause, he pounced on Yu Daiwei again like a blood-colored lightning bolt falling from the sky. His long saber danced, shattering many spells that were coming at him. Yu Daiwei quickly retreated. After suffering a loss, she had already judged Lu Ye's terrifying strength. How could she dare to stand there and take a beating? He hadn't expected Lu Yi to be so strong. Coupled with Lu Ye's sudden burst of strength, he was caught off guard. The two figures quickly swept through the air. As they chased and fled, spells and saber light surged. It was extremely lively. The Zergs attracted by the fluctuations of spiritual power were often swept away by the powerful aftershocks before they could get close, exploding into a bloody mist. The distance between them couldn't be closed anymore. The difference in strength was obvious. Lu Yi had activated the blood-stained spiritual pattern, but there was a limit to the increase in his strength. It was impossible to say that the blood-stained spiritual pattern could increase his strength infinitely. This was expected. However, he was fighting to his heart's content. Although he had only slashed Yu Daiwei a few times since the beginning of the battle, and there was no substantial effect, he had achieved his goal and had a clear understanding of his current strength. Of course, he still had some tricks up his sleeve. In the current situation, the awkward thing was that he couldn't close the distance between him and Yu Daiwei. However, if he activated the Blood River, he still had a chance. In particular, the Blood River technique integrated with the Blood Essence was more powerful than the ordinary Blood River. Once he pulled Yu Daiwei into the Blood River, he would have the home field advantage. When he suddenly attacked and got close to Yu Daiwei, it was the best opportunity to use the Blood River technique. He still had the Dragon Emperor. However, Yu Daiwei was not an ordinary Divine Sea Realm cultivator. Lu Yi wasn't sure if he could kill her with all his trump cards. Moreover, Lu Yi didn't want to kill her. The reason why he waited here was to use her as a whetstone. Although Yu Daiwei had captured him before, she didn't do anything to him. Tai Shan still had a favor to ask of him. There was no unresolvable blood feud between them. Zhang Song came just to capture him, not to kill him. In the end, he was forced to commit suicide. Through this battle, Lu Yi realized his own shortcomings. They lacked a method to quickly rush to the enemy's side. For a weapon cultivator, if they couldn't rush to the enemy's side, they wouldn't be able to pose a fatal threat to the enemy. This was something that every armament cultivator needed to consider. The blood escape art could be considered as a direction, but if one didn't use blood essence to activate it, it wouldn't be fast enough and wouldn't be able to create an element of surprise. Thus, it wouldn't be effective in one strike. If one used blood essence, there would be a limit to the number of times it could be used. Just as Lu Yi was deep in thought, Yu Daiwei suddenly shouted, "Stop! I'm not fighting anymore!" Lu Yi immediately came to a halt. His qi was boiling, and he found it difficult to calm down. Yu Daiwei put some distance between them before stopping. She looked Lu Yi up and down, as if she was trying to get to know him all over again. There was even an unconvinced expression on her face. There was nothing she could do about it. Fighting Lu Yi with an 8th order divine sea cultivation was something she was too embarrassed to tell others. If they continued fighting, her vigorous spirit qi reserves would undoubtedly give her a greater advantage, but there was no need for that. She wasn't here to kill Lu Yi, she was here to capture him. But now, it seemed that she couldn't complete this task. She didn't know how this little brat in front of her cultivated, but at every realm, he had the ability to kill enemies above his own realm. Once he reached the Divine Sea realm, it was even more exaggerated. With the strength he had just shown, an ordinary 4th or 5th order Divine Sea cultivator would likely die if they faced him. One would need to be at least a 6th order Divine Sea cultivator to be able to compete with him. In other words, she couldn't treat Lu Yi as a 1st order Divine Sea cultivator, but as a 6th order. With her strength, there was no way she could capture a 6th order cultivator alive. Instead of continuing to entangle with him and provoking the insect race, or even other Divine Sea cultivators from Grand Heaven Alliance, giving up and making peace was the only option. Fortunately, this little brat in front of her was sensible. When she said they wouldn't fight, he immediately stopped. Otherwise, in such a situation, she really would have had no choice but to run away. After all, she couldn't see the light of day, unlike Lu Yi, who could walk openly and fight with enemies. Not bad, little brat. Yu Daiwei grit her teeth. Looking at her appearance, it seemed like she couldn't wait to bite Lu Yi. Lu Yi didn't say anything and just slowly withdrew his saber. The aura on his body didn't weaken at all, and the blood-stained spirit tattoo was still working. "Are you a mute? You didn't even let out a fart." Yu Daiwei was a little angry, mainly because she had lost a lot of face this time and couldn't complete the task. "Tai Shan is looking for me?" Lu Yi asked. Yu Daiwei's pupils shrank. "Where did you hear this name?" Last time, when the High Lord and Lu Yi were chatting, she wasn't far away, so she was sure that the High Lord didn't reveal his name to him. It was even more impossible for her to mention this to Lu Yi, so how did Lu Yi know the name Tai Shan? It didn't make sense at all. Not getting an answer, Yu Daiwei frowned. "The High Lord wants to invite you over. He has something important to discuss with you." Lu Yi said casually, "Your way of inviting people is quite unique. If one's strength wasn't enough, it wouldn't be an invitation, but a capture, just like last time. He had to show enough strength to be qualified to be invited. Tell Tai Shan that I'll go look for him, but not now. Also, before I take the initiative to look for you, if he dares to pester me again, be careful that I don't reveal his trivial matters." Eldest senior brother had instructions for Tai Shan. As someone who had once worked for Tai Shan, eldest senior brother knew what Tai Shan was doing. Lu Yi had talked to eldest senior brother about this when they were at the Holy Island. If eldest senior brother was still in 9 states, Tai Shan would naturally follow his lead. However, people's hearts were fickle, and now that things had changed with the passage of time, even eldest senior brother couldn't be sure what kind of temperament Tai Shan had now. He had told Lu Yi to contact Tai Shan when the opportunity was right. Some things had to be discussed openly, and if the plan was right, Tai Shan might be able to become a helper. He needed time, but not now. At the very least, Lu Yi had to grow to the point where he could escape from Tai Shan's hands before he was qualified to talk to him. Otherwise, if he went over rashly, he would be entrusting his fate in the hands of others, which was too unwise. Then, Lu Yi turned around and soared into the sky. Yu Daiwei's expression was uncertain. Suddenly, she remembered something and shouted, "Where did Dao Shisan go?" "He's dead." A voice came from afar. Yu Daiwei gritted her teeth and stomped her feet. The Lord didn't have many Dao soldiers under his command. They couldn't be refined however they wanted. Dao Shisan was considered one of the best among all the Dao soldiers. It would be a pity to lose him just like that. However, Dao Shisan was nowhere to be found. If Lu Yi said that he was dead, then it was very likely that he was dead. Although the battle just now was short, it had caused quite a commotion. If there were any divine sea realm cultivators nearby, they would definitely be attracted over. After flying for some distance, she found a secluded place and reported all kinds of contact with Lu Yi to the Lord. Soon, she received a message from the Lord. "Wait!" Yu Daiwei naturally obeyed. Lu Yi continued to move forward. After making sure that Yu Daiwei didn't chase after him, he dispersed the blood-stained spiritual tattoos. Although his strength had been greatly enhanced by the spiritual tattoos, it also consumed a lot of his body. Therefore, it wasn't suitable for a long time. He had lost a drop of essence blood in this battle. Although essence blood was extremely precious to ordinary members of the blood clan, it was nothing to Lu Yi. As long as he had time, he could refine another drop to replenish it. After half a day, a towering city appeared in front of him. He had arrived at Grand Sky City. After more than 2 years, Lu Yi finally saw this familiar big city again. He felt very close to it. He didn't stop and plunged into the city. The number of cultivators in Grand Sky City had decreased significantly. Lu Yi couldn't even detect too many divine sea realm cultivators with his divine telekinesis. This had never happened before. Rebirth. The great age of wave fighting, the current situation was undoubtedly related to the current insect disaster. A large number of cultivators were scattered all over the military state. They were either guarding the gathering places of the human race, guarding the cracks in the ground, or rushing to provide assistance. As a result, there were fewer cultivators in Grand Sky City than before. Of course, the necessary defensive forces still needed to be left behind. After all, this was the center of Grand Sky Alliance in the military state. Lu Yi first went to the sect master's small courtyard. The sect master wasn't there, so the small courtyard was empty. This was expected. Then, he rushed to the law department. There weren't even any cultivators on duty at the door. He went straight in. At first glance, he saw a familiar face sitting behind a table with a sad face. His hair was messy and his beard was unshaven. It seemed that he hadn't rested for many days. In front of him was a pile of jade slips waiting to be dealt with. "Senior Brother Qing?" Lu Yi was surprised. The person sitting behind the table was actually Qing Xiu. He was also Gan Wudong's confidant. When Lu Yi was still in the Blue Flame Mountain Pass, he was the one who handed over the exploding fire spirit stones to Lu Yi every time. Back then, he was a true Lake Realm 9th Order cultivator. Now, he was a Divine Sea Realm cultivator. In 2 years, Lu Yi wasn't the only one who had grown. Hearing the voice, Qing Xiu raised his head in a daze and revealed a look of surprise. Lu Yi had been missing for more than 2 years. Although it was certain that he was still alive, no one knew where he was. Before the insect plague broke out, the sect master of Blue Blood Sect, Tang Yifeng, used many connections to inquire about Lu Ye's whereabouts. In the end, he found nothing. After the insect plague broke out, he didn't have any extra energy to track down Lu Ye's whereabouts. So, he didn't expect that a person who had been missing for more than 2 years would suddenly appear in front of him. "Lu Ye, you're back?" Qing Xiu smiled. Lu Yi also smiled, Senior Brother Qing, did you rise to the top and change the world? What about our sect Master Qian? Did he fail? Qing Xiu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Junior brother, don't talk nonsense. Sect Master Qian went out for some business, so he left the trivial matters here to me. Lu Yi understood. He also knew that a master like Gan Wudong wouldn't have an accident easily. He was just curious about why Qing Xiu was sitting here handling official business. Now, it seemed that the situation in the military state was more serious than he thought. Otherwise, Gan Wudong wouldn't have left the law department so easily. To be continued. Chapter 1064. In the law department's main hall, Lu Yi and Qing Xiu chatted for a while. Qing Xiu asked about Lu Ye's whereabouts in the past 2 years, and Lu Yi only said that he was trapped in a small hidden realm and had only escaped a few days ago. What happened in the blood-refining realm was too bizarre to talk about. Qing Xiu couldn't help but sigh. No one would feel good being trapped in a place for 2 years. For a moment, he imagined a dark, lonely, and cramped environment. By the way, Junior Marshal Brother Lu, since you haven't returned for a long time, the law department has removed you from the position of captain. Now, Xiao Xinghe is the captain of Team D9. Lu Yi nodded. It's my duty. He had expected this, so he wasn't surprised. Right now, Junior Marshal Brother Lu, you came back just in time. A few teams are short of manpower. Junior Marshal Brother, which team do you want to join? I'll arrange it for you. Qing Xiu had the authority to do this. Otherwise, Gan Wudong wouldn't have put him here to deal with official business. Of course, Gan Wudong was still the one in charge when it came to important matters. Lu Yi activated his spiritual power. Qing Xiu's eyes widened. Junior Marshal Brother, you're already at the Divine Ocean? 2 years in the Hidden Realm is a blessing in disguise, Lu Yi explained. Qing Xiu was stunned for a while before he regained his senses. Junior Apprentice Brother, the speed of your cultivation is really something. 2 years ago, his cultivation was much higher than Lu Ye's, but now they were at the same level. Although he knew that Lu Ye's cultivation speed was fast, this was too exaggerated. After calming down, Qing Xiu said, Junior Marshal Brother, since you're already at the Divine Ocean, I don't want to assign you to any team. How about this? The department head should be back in a few days. Junior Marshal Brother, you can rest for a few days. When the department head comes back, he'll make the decision for you. The law enforcement division's teams were all made up of true lake realm cultivators. Once they reached the Divine Ocean, they couldn't work in teams anymore. Most of them worked alone, which was more convenient and efficient. Lu Yi had met Divine Ocean cultivators like this before when he was on a mission. As the manager of the Law Enforcement Division, he had the authority to manage any team. Lu Yi had no objections. He said, Senior Marshal Brother Qing, I want to gather a batch of resources. Can Senior Marshal Brother Qing make the decision? Qing Xiu asked, for business or personal reasons? If it was for the public, there would be a share for the public. If it was for private interests, there would also be a share for private interests. They couldn't be lumped together. For the Crown Prince. Qing Xiu nodded. What kind of resources do you need and how much? Lu Yi then reported the names of several refining materials. In terms of quantity, the more the better. No problem. Qing Xiu readily agreed and immediately signed a warrant. He picked up the department head's seal and stamped it. I'm only temporarily handling the department's internal affairs. I don't have much authority. The amount of resources that Junior Brother can mobilize is limited. Use it for now. If it's not enough, you can ask the department head when he returns. He didn't ask what Lu Yi wanted to do. Since it was for the public, Qian Wudong would ask about it later. He wasn't afraid that Lu Yi would be greedy. Lu Yi left the main hall of the law department and arrived at the quartermaster department with the warrant signed by Qing Xiu. Lu Yi had been here last time to collect the resources of Team D9. Naturally, he was familiar with the door. However, the cultivator guarding the quartermaster department gave him the impression that he was a bit stingy. Guarding the door of the quartermaster department's treasury was like a prison. He couldn't wait to get all the good things in but didn't want to take anything out. It was probably because of this character that he was sent to guard the treasury of the quartermaster department. Fortunately, the resources that Lu Yi needed this time weren't precious and the share wasn't large. He didn't encounter any difficulties during the whole process. After collecting the resources, Lu Yi hurried back to his small courtyard. The courtyard was empty. There was no one in sight. The stone tables and chairs in the courtyard were covered in dust. It was obvious that Team D9 hadn't returned to Grand Sky City for a long time. He felt a little disappointed in his heart. Back then, when he had pulled up Team D9, he had originally planned to grow together with the people he was familiar with. In the end, the heavens did not go according to his wishes. Not long after the team was formed, he, the team leader, was gone. Now that he had reached the Divine Sea, it was difficult for him to move with Team D9. Moreover, with his cultivation speed, the gap between him and the others would only grow bigger and bigger. It was useless to be disappointed. This was the price he had to pay to grow. Pushing open the door and walking in, Lu Yi sat in his familiar seat. After thinking for a while, he sent out a few messages. He had been missing for 2 years. The sect master, second senior sister, and master should be very worried. Previously, he hadn't really returned from the Myriad Demon's Ridge, so he didn't have such thoughts. Now that he was in Grand Sky City, he had to report that he was safe. The first to reply was from second senior sister. He has already sent me a message. By the time you came to report that you were safe, the insect race had already occupied the 9 states. Second senior sister's tone was reprimanding, but Lu Yi felt a strong sense of concern. He hurriedly replied, "I've been busy these 2 days. I just had some free time. Please don't be angry, senior sister." Second senior sister naturally wouldn't really blame him. She was just angry that he didn't send a message immediately. "How's the situation in our sect?" Lu Yi asked. "Don't worry about our sect. With Madame Yun and I here, there won't be any big trouble. It's a good opportunity for our sect's disciples to gain experience. The Ziwei Dao Palace has also sent people to help." Lu Yi understood and was relieved. The main reason was that their sect didn't have a big business. Currently, there were only a few spirit mountains that were easy to defend. If they were like other sects with a big business, they would need more people once they opened their shop. The next to send a message was his master. He only said one word, "Okay." He probably knew what he meant. She should be with second senior sister at this moment, so there was no need to say anything. Lu Yi greeted him with the attitude of a virtuous disciple. The hierarch was the last to send a message. "Where are you?" "Vast Sky City. I have something to do. After I'm done, I'll return to Vast Sky City. You stay there and wait for me." He was afraid that Lu Yi would run away again. Although he knew that Lu Yi had returned safely, he still needed to see him to be at ease. Lu Yi hurriedly agreed. After checking the battlefield imprint, it seemed that there was no one else he needed to report his safety. Then, he took out the materials he had received from the military supply department. He activated his spiritual power and began to refine them. 3 days later, Lu Yi was busy in full swing when the guard token at his waist suddenly vibrated. He hurriedly checked it and found that it was a message from Qian Wudong, asking him to meet him at the law department. Lu Yi took care of the things he was busy with and then stood up. After a while, Lu Yi stepped into the hall of the law department. Qian Wudong was sitting behind a table, seemingly deep in thought. When he heard the noise, he looked up. "Greetings, Your Excellency." Lu Yi stepped forward and bowed. Qian Wudong smiled. "It's good that you're back. You must have suffered a lot in the past 2 years. Lu Yi recalled his experience in the blood-refining world and replied, "It's not bad." He didn't suffer much, but he had a lot of strange experiences. Qian Wudong sighed. After you were captured that day, Elder Tang and I had been trying to find out where you were. Unfortunately, we had no clue. Fortunately, you were lucky enough to escape on your own. Do you know who captured you? What's their purpose? Lu Yi said, the one who captured me is a woman called Yu Daiwei. But there is someone else behind her. Yu Daiwei calls him Senior Master. As for his identity, I don't know. He didn't tell the truth. It wasn't that he had to be wary of Qian Wudong, but the Grand Mountain matter involved too many people. Qian Wudong was the right-hand man of his eldest senior brother many years ago. If he was dragged into this matter, the Blue Blood sect would be implicated. There were some things he could tell Qian Wudong, but there were some things Lu Yi wanted to tell the sect master. As for their purpose, Lu Yi smiled bitterly. To be honest, I don't know why they wanted to capture me. Not long after I was captured, the small secret realm suddenly collapsed, and I was trapped in an inexplicable space. Fortunately, heaven helps the good, and after many twists and turns, I finally found my way back. Yu Daiwei. Qian Wudong frowned. I've never heard of this person. What is her cultivation? 8th Order Divine Sea Realm. Qian Wudong narrowed his eyes. If it was a 1st or 2nd Order Divine Sea Realm cultivator, it was normal that he hadn't heard of her. The 9 states was so big that he might not even know all the Divine Sea Realm cultivators in the military province, let alone the other continents. There were new Divine Sea Realm cultivators every year. But an 8th Order Divine Sea Realm cultivator was different. Such a powerful cultivator shouldn't be unknown, but he had never heard of her. After pondering for a while, Qian Wudong couldn't figure out many things. He vaguely felt that Lu Yi didn't explain, but since Lu Yi didn't want to say, he couldn't ask more. So, he changed the topic. I heard from Qing Xiu that you have reached the Divine Sea Realm? Yes. That's a blessing in disguise. Qian Wudong nodded slightly. He wasn't surprised by the speed of Lu Ye's breakthrough. He was even surprised by Lin Yinxiu. He felt that Lu Yi was similar to his eldest senior brother from a few decades ago. They were the same kind of people. It was common sense in the 9 states. In the 2 years you were away, the 9 states was in chaos. The insect plague was rampant. I think you already know about it. I learned about it on my way back. Qian Wudong's face turned serious. There are people everywhere. You came back just in time. I have a task for you. Sir, please tell me. Refine exploding fire spirit stones. The more the better. Lu Yi was happy. This was exactly what he wanted. Even if Qian Wudong didn't mention it, he would have taken the initiative to apply. He had no choice. After all the trouble in the blood-refining world's God-Gate Sea, he was short on fuel for his talent tree. He needed a large number of exploding fire spirit stones to replenish his fuel. Moreover, he wanted to stimulate more spirit runes. Since it was a task, there would naturally be a reward for it. Moreover, refining exploding fire spirit stones would give him a lot of points, so his harvest would be even greater. Due to the insect plague, the exploding fire spirit stones could play a crucial role in many situations. That was especially true for cultivators with low cultivation bases. By carrying a few exploding fire spirit stones with them, they could turn the tables during critical moments. Chapter 1065. What Lu Yi didn't know was that 2 years ago, the Quartermaster Department had talked to Qian Wudong about the explosive fire spirit rock more than once. In the eyes of the Quartermaster Division, such a strategic weapon that could be popularized should be handed over to the Quartermaster Division to distribute and not be controlled by the Law Division. This was what the Quartermaster Division did for a living, and the Law Division only needed to take care of matters related to the law. It was clearly crossing the line to take care of such strategic resources. However, Qian Wudong was a smart man. Others might not know the secret of the explosive fire spiritual rock, but he knew that only Lu Yi could make it. If he really handed it over to the Quartermaster Department, Lu Yi would have to hand it over to the Quartermaster Department. How could he agree to that? No problem, Lu Yi agreed. However, sir, I have another treasure that I want you to see. Qian Wudong laughed. Treasure? What treasure? He was a man of high status and had seen all kinds of treasures. However, Lu Yi was being so mysterious. He couldn't help but be interested. Then, he saw Lu Yi take out an array disc and hand it over. Qian Wudong took it and looked at it. The array disc was crudely made, and he didn't know who made it. Although he didn't study it closely, he knew it wasn't of high quality. But what kind of treasure was this? However, he knew that one couldn't judge an array disc by its appearance. One had to look at its internal structure. Since it was Lu Yi who took it out, it was worth looking forward to seeing. Qian Wudong poured his spiritual energy into the array disc. When the sound of birds chirping could be heard, a layer of primordial halo appeared with Qian Wudong as the center, covering a radius of 10 feet. When he was in the blood-refining realm, the twin chi-linked branch array disc that Lu Yi had refined could only cover a radius of 5 feet, but with the improvement of his cultivation base, the effect of the array disc he had refined had obviously increased. At the very least, the diameter of the array disc that he had refined had doubled. This thing played a crucial role in resisting the encirclement and annihilation of the blood race army in the blood-refining world. It was also useful in 9 regions, especially at this moment. That was why Lu Yi immediately asked Qing Xiu for a batch of materials to refine the twin chi connecting branch array disc. Qian Wudong's expression turned serious as he sat up straighter. He felt the miraculous power of the disc and looked at Lu Yi. His eyes were filled with excitement. I can borrow power? Under the cover of the formation plate, he could easily connect with Lu Ye's aura. He could also sense that if Lu Yi wanted, he could easily borrow Lu Ye's power for his own use. Yes. Lu Yi nodded. In an instant, Gan Wudong thought of many things that could be used. When it came to the formation plate, its greatest function was obviously not simply to borrow strength. Its most profound function was to allow different cultivators to easily connect their qi. If he could rely on this item to connect the cultivator's qi to form a formation, whatever Feng Wujiang could think of, so could Gan Wudong. However, Lu Yi the refiner had taken a long time to think of this. This was the difference in knowledge and experience. Don't tell me you made this. Gan Wudong looked at Lu Yi. Lu Yi grinned back at him. Gan Wudong was speechless. What kind of person was this? He could easily refine the explosive fire spirit rock and this miraculous formation plate. Ever since he joined the prefecture guards, strange and bizarre items appeared one after another. Moreover, regardless of whether it was the exploding fire spirit stone or this indescribable formation disc, they all belonged to the strategic level, their value immeasurable. Sir, you know that I'm proficient in the art of spiritual tattoos. Both the explosive fire spirit rock and this twin chi connecting branch array disc have spiritual tattoos as their cores. They're just different types of spiritual tattoos. As long as you can construct spiritual tattoos, you can refine them. Of course, Qian Wudong didn't think it was as simple as he made it out to be. Putting the formation plate aside, let's talk about the explosive fire spiritual stone. Although there weren't many spiritual tattooists in the military province, they had a large number of cultivators. Most of them could construct explosive spiritual tattoos. So far, only Lu Yi and Igu could refine explosive fire spirit rock in large quantities. The requirement to construct explosive spiritual tattoos on the explosive fire spirit rock was too high. It wasn't something that just anyone could do. A long time ago, explosive fire spirit rock had appeared in the land of the 9 states. It wasn't Lu Ye's original creation, but it was too difficult and risky to refine. Gradually, no spiritual tattooists dared to take the risk. Needless to say, he had just sensed the formation plate and found that the spiritual inscriptions in the formation plate were complex. Only those who had profound attainments in the way of spiritual inscriptions could construct it, and it was even more difficult to apply it to equipment refining. Twin Chi connecting branch. Gan Wudong nodded. That's a good name. Is that the name of the spiritual tattoos? Yes. You asked Cheng Xiushan for supplies to refine this thing? Lu Yi nodded. How's the production? It was a good thing, but if the production wasn't enough, it couldn't be popularized. Its usefulness would be limited. By then, only a few elites would be able to use it. It won't be a problem to refine 700 or 800 pieces a day, Lu Yi replied. Refining this thing required practice. In the blood refining world, Lu Yi could refine 200 pieces a day with his 9th order true lake realm cultivation. Now that he had reached the spirit sea realm, the production rate had greatly increased. And this was just a conservative estimate. If he went all out, he could refine 1,000 pieces a day. The core of the formation plate was the twin chi connecting branch spirit tattoo. He could construct it at will. It didn't matter whether the formation plate was beautiful or ugly. It was just a carrier for the spiritual tattoos. This is a treasure. Gan Wudong was excited. A big treasure. It was foreseeable that once this thing was popularized, the overall strength of the cultivators in the land of war would be greatly improved. If enough of it could be refined, it could even be used to support the cultivators of Lu Haotian's alliance in other states. What the 9 states lacked right now was an external force that could directly improve the cultivators' strength. With a serious expression, Gan Wudong said, Lu Yi, listen. Lu Yi cupped his fist. You are ordered to refine the twin chi connecting branch spirit array immediately. Put your heart and soul into it. The law department will provide all the materials needed. No mistake. Yes. Lu Yi accepted the order and said, the explosive fire spirit stone, don't refine it for now. Just focus on refining the twin chi connecting branch spirit array. Don't. Lu Yi hurriedly said, it's easy to get tired if you only refine one thing. You can only refine 2 things at the same time. If he didn't refine the explosive fire spirit stone, how could he make up for the 30% deficit? If he couldn't make up for the deficit, how could he replenish the fuel for his talent tree? Gan Wudong looked at him meaningfully. Since you have an idea, I'll give you a price. But you must guarantee the supply of this formation plate first. The explosive fire spirit stone was a good thing, but it was a consumable. In comparison, the twin chi connecting branch spirit array was undoubtedly more useful. Thank you, sir. Walking out of the law department's main hall, Lu Yi knew that he would be busy for a while. When he was refining the explosive fire spirit stone, he had haggled with Gan Wudong for a while and confirmed that he would be rewarded with 5 battle merits for every explosive fire spirit stone he refined. But this time, he didn't ask for any battle merits. The insect disaster in the 9 states was related to the fate of the entire human race. Since he could contribute to it, he didn't need to think of it as a business deal. He also knew that Gan Wudong wouldn't mistreat him. If he really refined the twin chi connecting branch spirit array, he would be rewarded with battle merit. Some things didn't need to be said on the surface. As soon as Lu Yi returned to his courtyard, Cheng Xiu followed him. He brought a large amount of fire spirit stones and materials to refine the formation plate. After a few simple words, he told Lu Yi that he would come every 3 days to pick up a batch of finished products. This was the benefit of having an organization behind him. If he was alone, even if Lu Yi had a divine skill, he would have to spend a lot of time and effort to collect resources. It would be a waste of time and energy. Closing the door, Lu Yi began refining. In the past, in order to control the production of explosive fire spirit stones, he didn't pay much attention to it, but now he didn't have to. Refining explosive fire spirit stones was extremely simple for him. In comparison, refining the twin chi connecting branch spirit array required more effort. With his divine sense, Lu Yi began refining explosive fire spirit stones with one hand and the twin chi connecting branch spirit array with the other. He even had the energy to check on the situation of his clone, Li Tai Bai. It had to be said that after breaking through to the Divine Sea, his divine sense had become much stronger than before. Although his cultivation was only at the first-order divine sea realm, whether it was the foundation of his body or the strength of his soul, he was much stronger than an ordinary divine sea realm cultivator. Li Tai was safe. As a divine sea realm cultivator and the Little Mountain Pass leader of Dark Moon Linley, he didn't need to do anything. Only when his subordinates reported that they had discovered a divine sea realm insect race would he have a chance to take action. Lin Yu was also there, so the two of them took turns to go out, ensuring the safety of the soldiers. Over the past few days, Li Tai had taken action twice more, and each time he completed the task easily. The clone had all the abilities of the main body, except for the ability of the talent tree to burn impurities. Because the clone only had the root of the talent tree, there was no fuel to store. Therefore, if the clone wanted to maintain its strength, it had to meditate after every action to restore the spirit chi it consumed as soon as possible. In this way, as long as the fighting wasn't too frequent, there wouldn't be too much of an impact. Days passed, and every 3 days, Tring Xiu would come to the small courtyard to collect many finished products from Lu Yi. Lu Yi wasn't just refining explosive fire spirit stones and twin chi connecting branch spirit array. He was also in a state of cultivation. Regarding cultivation, he had his own rhythm. Basically, after his strength had grown, he would settle down for a period of time and wait for his foundation to become solid before moving on to the next step of cultivation. This way, his foundation would become more and more solid. This was also one of the root causes of his ability to kill enemies above his realm. After several months of accumulation in the blood-refining world, his foundation as a first-order divine sea realm cultivator had stabilized, so now he naturally needed to improve his cultivation. Using the golden spirit stick, a golden vortex slowly rotated in front of him. The roots of the talent tree pierced into this vortex and swallowed the pure and surging energy inside. Chapter 1066. In the center of Haotian City, there was a Heguang Hall, which had the meaning of Heguang Hall. If Haotian City was the center of Haotian Alliance in the military province, then Heguang Hall was the center of the center because it was the place where the elder group was in charge. Usually, when something big happened in the military province, the elder group would hold a meeting to discuss how to deal with it. The number of elders in the elder group was not fixed, sometimes more and sometimes less, because some people had the title of elder group but were not in Haotian City all year round. Just like the chief in the past. If it wasn't for the future of his disciples, the chief wouldn't have come to Heguang Hall at such a young age to work hard. Although there weren't many elders like the chief, there were still a few of them. On normal days, other than a few elders who stayed behind to guard the Light of Peace Hall, there was basically no one around. Nobody came to disturb them either. The Haotian Alliance had all kinds of positions. If anything happened, they could solve it by themselves. In fact, the elder group didn't need to be in charge of many things. They were only responsible for the general direction. However, Heguang Hall was also lively. There was a small meeting every 3 months and a big meeting every year. It was the time when the higher-ups of Haotian Alliance in the military province gathered. Not many people came to the small meeting. However, every time a big meeting was held, the elders of the Elder Committee and the chiefs of the departments would attend as long as they were free. That was because this big meeting basically determined the direction of the Haotian Alliance in the military province in the coming years. Today was the day of the annual meeting. Since the beginning of the day, cultivators with powerful auras had arrived from all over the world and rushed into the Light of Harmony Hall. Most of these cultivators were old, and there were also middle-aged people, but there were no youths or youth. By the end of the day, there were almost 30 people in the hall. Each of them was a powerful figure in the top sex in the military province. Except for the elders in the elder group, all the department heads in Haotian City were here. On the main seat, Pang Zhen slowly opened his eyes and said, "Is everyone here?" "Yes." He was the vice chief of Haotian Alliance, the vice chief of Vitality Sect, and the chief elder of Hautian City's elder group. It was customary for him to host every big meeting. Someone said, "Those who can come should be here." Yes. There were still a few empty seats, but they didn't show up at this time. They should be busy and couldn't come. This was a common thing. Pang Zhen nodded slightly and was about to speak when he suddenly looked outside. At the same time, the others also noticed a powerful aura was rapidly approaching. After a short while, a sage-like figure stepped in. It was the sect master of the Jade Blood Sect, Tang Yifeng. He looked travel-worn, and it was unknown where he had rushed back from. "I'm late to explore the fissure. Sorry for making you wait." The sect master found Yifeng's seat. "Oh." Pang Zhen nodded slightly, his gaze sweeping left and right as he continued, "Almost everyone is here, so let's not wait any longer. Let's begin the discussion." Yes, no. The 9 provinces people were. The situation was, the current situation, and so on. The current situation. The 9 regions' 9 provinces. Was many things, s had. These of Esofs was a realm cultivators was a realm cultive cultivators, realm cultive off course, of realm with realm cultive cultivators realm, of course of them were of course they was of them was of. One by one, the topics were solved. Soon, they talked about the earth fissures. The insect plague came from deep underground. This was the most embarrassing problem for the cultivators in the 9 provinces. The deeper they went, the stronger the magnetic field was. It would greatly affect the cultivators' strength. Therefore, if they wanted to solve the insect plague from the root, they had to go deep into the earth fissures and find the nest of the insect clan. Only in this way could they solve the problem once and for all. All the cultivators in the Divine Sea Realm had the experience of exploring the earth fissures. Sect Master Tang Yifeng, for example, had been searching in various earth fissures to see if he could find a safe way to go deep underground. Unfortunately, he didn't find anything substantial. Qian Wu went out recently. He went to investigate the situation of a certain earth fissures. What they could do now was to explore as many earth fissures as possible. Then, they would gather all the information and see if they could find a way to solve the insect plague. News after news was reported by various people, but none of them made any eye-catching discoveries. This made people feel quite helpless, but this was reality. Every cultivator present was powerful, but in the face of such a disaster that engulfed the entire realm, they were still powerless. "Junior Brother Pang, have you found anything in other provinces?" an elder of the Elder Council asked. Pang Zhen shook his head. "I communicated with the Deputy Alliance Masters of other provinces the day before yesterday. They didn't find anything either." That elder sighed and said, "When will this world come to an end?" Another elder said, "The insect plague has been sweeping for 2 years. Although the impact on us cultivators is not small, we can still hold on. But for mortals it is unbearable pain. If this situation continues for 3 to 5 years, the foundation of the cultivation world in the 9 regions will be shaken. Mortals were not like cultivators with high cultivation. They needed to eat, and cultivators with low cultivation also needed to eat. They could not use spiritual power to supplement their needs. However, many fertile fields in the 9 provinces had been destroyed, and many places had no harvest for 2 years. They had to rely on the food they had accumulated in previous years to survive. Cultivators were guarding the cities, and it was true that they could protect the cities from being attacked by the insect race. However, in many cities, there were already scenes of mortals starving to death. Cultivators and mortals were closely related. If too many mortals died, it would have an immeasurable impact on the cultivation world in the 9 regions. This was also one of the reasons why the Hautian Alliance and the Wanmo Ridge stopped their conflict in the past 2 years. Compared to the future of the entire cultivation world, The confrontation that had lasted for thousands of years was not so important. We still have to find a safe way to go deep underground. There is a magnetic field underground. The deeper we go, the lower our strength. This is an unsolvable problem. Elder Tang, did you find anything this time? Pang Zhen looked at the sect leader. The sect leader shook his head. This time, I went 10,000 feet underground. I saw the insect clan but not the nest. In this place, the headmaster's power was suppressed to 70%. Besides, there were many insects in the spirit sea realm down there. Although he had killed many of them, the insects were endless. He had no choice but to retreat for now. Then continue to search. There is always a way out. The cultivation world in the 9 regions can't be destroyed in our generation. The sect leader nodded and was about to leave. Generally speaking, the meeting should have ended at this time. His most promising disciple had returned safely. He had received the news a month ago and had wanted to see it for a long time. However, what surprised the sect leader was that the people who should have left were all sitting upright and motionless. The sect leader could not help but stop. He vaguely sensed that they probably still had something to discuss. A month had passed. Naturally, he was not in a hurry. He stayed and observed the changes. A strange scene appeared. Everyone sat upright and no one spoke. Even Pang Zhen, who sat at the seat of the host, remained silent. What happened? The sect leader was puzzled. Are you all holding back? Someone suddenly spoke. The sect leader looked up and saw that it was the head of the quartermaster department, Chao Yi. The sect leader was very surprised because the quartermaster department rarely said anything in the meeting. After all, they were in charge of military supplies, so they only needed to do their job well. It had always been others who asked them for help, and they rarely asked others for help. Whether it was the mortal world or the cultivation world, the ones in charge of money and supplies had always been the boss. He wondered what the quartermaster department had to say today. All right, since all of you are going to be mutes, then this old man will start, Chao Yi said. He raised his hand and brushed the table. Several things that looked like formation plates appeared on the table. Everyone immediately looked over. The sect leader keenly sensed that these people's eyes were a little hot, like hungry wolves who had seen their prey. Recently, some formation plates like this have appeared in the War Province. Hey, I think many of you have heard about it. Yes. After all, this thing had only appeared for a month. Moreover, because the number of formation plates was not large enough, they did not circulate widely enough. They asked, Head Chao, what is the use of this formation plate? Yes. Why don't you see it for yourself? Chao Yi smiled slightly. Then he raised his hand and took a formation plate over. The others who did not know about it also took one each. The sect leader wanted to take one, but he was too late. The formation plates were all divided up. The Divine Sea Realm cultivators who got the formation plates poured their spiritual energy into them. The next moment, a slight buzzing sound was heard and a layer of halo appeared. A formation plate covered an area with a radius of 100 feet. Several formation plates were scattered in different places and covered everyone. The Divine Sea Realm cultivators who knew about it remained calm. Those who saw the power of the formation plates for the first time raised their eyebrows and felt the mysterious power in the formation plates. What kind of formation plate is this? How can it be so magical? The Divine Sea Realm cultivator who asked first exclaimed. Although it was the first time he felt it, he immediately saw through the many magical uses of this formation plate. For a moment, many thoughts were rolling in his mind. He could almost imagine the scene where the cultivators on his side held this formation plate and killed everyone on the battlefield. The Spirit and Branches formation plate contains a Spirit and Branches formation plate. Chao Yi explained, everyone here is knowledgeable and many of you have dabbled in the Tao of spirit tattoos. Have you heard of such a spirit tattoo in this world? Yes. Everyone shook their heads. Before this formation plate appeared, no one had heard of such a magical spirit tattoo. I can only say that there are talents in every generation. The younger generation will surpass us in time. Chao Yi sighed with emotion. Department Leader Chao, is this formation plate made by your quartermaster department? If so, it could be widely distributed and increase the strength of the cultivators on his side. For the current situation, this thing was too important. Our quartermaster department does not have such a talent. Chao Yi was a bit sarcastic. As he spoke, he glanced at Qian Wudong, who was not far away. Please enter the latest update in your browser. Go to the Essence Library to view. To provide you with the latest update of Momos, the great sage of human Tao. In order to be able to view the latest update of this book next time, please keep your bookmark well. Chapter 1066. Formation Plate Free Reading for the Grand Council. Chapter 1067. Inside the Hall of Peace, many pairs of eyes were looking at Qian Wudong. The hierarch was surprised. To be honest, when he first saw the twin chi-connected formation, he also thought it was something developed by the Commissariat Department. It should be noted that the Commissariat Department had collected a large number of talents in refining weapons, refining elixirs and spiritual tattoos. It could be said that all the special talents in Force Province were under the jurisdiction of the Commissariat Department in principle. If necessary, the Commissariat Department had the right to conscript any special talents in any sect for its own use. These talents with special skills were gathered in the Quartermaster Division, and they were the foundation that ensured the supply of all kinds of military supplies to the front lines. In the past, the Quartermaster Division would occasionally bring out some strange things, but they were basically flashy and useless. They were just for novelty. Because of this, the Quartermaster Department's R&D department was criticized by many people. They had been holding back their anger for many years, wanting to prove themselves. If this twin chi-connected formation disc was really something developed by the Quartermaster Department, it would be able to wash away the shame and make the Quartermaster Department famous. But now, it seemed that this thing had nothing to do with the Quartermaster Department. Instead, it seemed to be from the Law Department. The hierarch muttered to himself, "Since when did the Law Department have this kind of talent? Why are you all looking at me? Drink tea, drink tea." Qian Wudong was stared at by dozens of pairs of eyes, but his expression didn't change. He picked up the teacup in front of him and took a sip. He had heard about today's incident, so he wasn't surprised. Chao Yi slammed the table and shouted, "Don't play dumb here. This thing came from your law department. How dare you say you don't know?" "Yes. I know, of course I know. What's wrong with that?" Qian Wudong looked at Chao Yi innocently. "Your Quartermaster Division's R&D department has raised a bunch of incompetent people. What they've developed is just a bunch of fancy garbage that can't be put to great use. Someone in my law department has made the twin chi binding formation disc, and it's not like he's in your way. Brother Chao, why are you getting mad at me?" "Humph." Chao Yi snorted. "Such a strategic treasure should be under the control of our Quartermaster Department. Only by using it together can it maximize its value." "Humph." Qian Wudong smiled and said, "The disc is in your hands. If Brother Chao wants to make it, you can ask your refiners to disassemble it and study it. It shouldn't be hard to make it, right? Your company has raised so many refiners, they can't just sit around and do nothing. They should at least display some value. How could a treasure like this be refined by just anyone?" Chao Yi huffed angrily. He had done what Gon Wudong said before. As soon as he got the formation plate, he summoned the refiners under his command to disassemble the formation plate and study it. He wanted to imitate and refine it. However, the embarrassing thing was that even those famous refiners in the military province could not guarantee the success rate of refining. It was not difficult to refine the formation plate, but the difficult part was the spiritual tattoos on it. The spiritual tattoos were so complicated that it was almost impossible to perfectly brand such a spiritual tattoo in the process of refining. As a result, Many weapon refiners tried for half a month and only managed to refine a mere 5-array disc. Moreover, they were all products of luck and were difficult to reproduce. If not, he wouldn't have brought this up at the meeting. He didn't want to embarrass the quartermaster division. His quartermaster division was in charge of this area. However, even with so many people, there were no outstanding results. On the other hand, it was the law division that made a breakthrough. The more Chao Yi thought about it, the more upset he felt. Why didn't he have such a talent under his command? Why did Gan Wudong have to step on dog sh*t? If this thing isn't made by humans, then what is it in Brother Chao's hands? Gan Wudong chuckled. Gan Wudong. Chao Yi slammed the table again. I think your law division is tired of living. Do you still want to receive supplies from our quartermaster division in the future? Yes. Vice President, I object. Gan Wudong turned to look at Peng Zhen. This man is abusing his power to threaten me. He's planning to embezzle the resources of my law division. If he dares to be so presumptuous in front of so many officials, I don't know how he's going to suppress us behind our backs. Please, Vice Alliance Leader and Elders, remove him from the position of quartermaster and appoint someone else. Yes. Damn it. Chao Yi jumped onto the table angrily, rolled up his sleeves and was about to pounce on Qian Wudong. Beside him, Shi Jian, the chief of the recruitment department, and Wangu Lu, the chief of the official department, hurriedly pulled him back and comforted him. Chao Yi struggled as he yelled, "Come on, let's fight one-on-one. The rule of the cultivation world is that whoever has the bigger fist gets to talk. Let's see if I don't beat you to a pulp." Ha! Gan Wudong sneered. Come on. Don't be fooled by your old arms and legs. I won't go easy on you. Today, I'll let you know why people say that the older the ginger, the spicier it is. Chao Yi got even more excited. Come on, I'll wait for you here. Gan Wudong sat down and knocked on the table in front of him. All right. Peng Zhen said softly, stop it. Gan Wudong, you should stop talking. Elder Chao, go back to your seat. You're the head of a division. How can you behave like this in the meeting? All right. Since Peng Zhen had spoken, Chao Yi gave him face. He shook left and right and glared at Qian Wudong before sitting back down. Gan Wudong continued to drink his tea. Peng Zhen looked around and felt a slight headache coming on. Both of them were ninth-order Divine Sea Masters, so naturally they wouldn't be so shallow. Chao Ye's temper was indeed fiery, but that didn't mean he didn't know the gravity of the situation. Acting like this was undoubtedly a bit hurried, but it also showed how much importance he attached to the twin spirit connecting spirit array disc. The Quartermaster Division hadn't had anything good to show for so many years. If it had always been like this, it would have been fine, but the Law Division had thrown out the twin chi-connected branch array disc, making the Quartermaster Division seem incompetent. This was why Chao Yi fought so hard. He was in charge of the Quartermaster Division, so he had to think about his subordinates. This was also related to the small disputes between the two in the past. The cause was the exploding fire spirit stone. When this thing appeared, Chao Yi had tried to negotiate with Gan Wudong, wanting to move the refining of the exploding fire spirit stone to the Quartermaster Division as a merit. Of course, the Quartermaster Division didn't refuse, offering to provide some material convenience, but after several failed attempts, Chao Yi could only give up. Gan Wudong insisted, and Chao Yi couldn't force his way out. This small dispute didn't affect the overall situation, but the value of the twin chi-connected branch array disc was different from that of the exploding fire spirit stone. The exploding fire spirit stone could be ignored, but the twin chi-connected branch array disc couldn't be ignored. Logically speaking, Chao Yi was right. This kind of treasure should be managed and distributed by the Quartermaster Division. This was their duty, and their job was to do this. However, the person who could refine the twin chi-connected branch array disc was from the Law Division. If Gan Wudong didn't let him go, no one could do anything. Thinking about it, Pang Zhen turned to the sect master and asked, "What does old Tang think?" The sect master was studying the array disc in his hand. He felt that this thing was wonderful. If it could really be made popular, it would definitely be a good thing. He didn't dare to say too much, but the overall strength of the Haotian alliance would increase by at least 20 to 30%, especially the level of the Cloud River True Lake. This was extremely shocking, and no elixir could compare to it. Hearing Pang Zhen's question, the sect master was confused. He didn't know why he was asked. He had been in the elder group for 2 years, but he didn't care about any specific matters. He was only here to provide someone for the disciples to rely on. Therefore, no matter if it was the big or small meeting, he rarely expressed his opinion. "Old Tang, there's something you don't know. This array disc was made by your disciple." Pang Zhen took the initiative to explain. "Made by my disciple?" The sect master was stunned. He immediately reacted. "You mean," Pang Zhen nodded, "it's that Lu Ye." Not only did he refine the array disc, but the exploding fire spirit stone was also made by him. Originally, Qian Wudong had kept all this a secret. The quartermaster department only knew that the exploding fire spiritual rock was made by the law department, but they didn't know who made it. However, some things couldn't be ignored, especially by the Divine Sea Realm cultivators who wanted to know. During the 2 years that Lu Ye went missing, the supply of exploding fire spirit stone gradually stopped. When he returned, the supply of exploding fire spirit stone was renewed. Moreover, the twin chi connection array disc appeared. Then, the origin of these two things was clear at a glance. The sect master laughed. "This kid has such ability? I didn't know." Pang Zhen nodded. "The younger generation will surpass us in time. This world will be the world of the younger generation after all." He sighed in his heart. When Lu Yi entered the Jade Blood sect, he had watched the entire process. He did not expect that the young man, who was not valued by any sect and only had the aptitude of a one-leaf cultivator, would not only reach the spirit sea realm in just a few years, but he could also do things that ordinary people could not. If he had known about this earlier, his Vitality sect would have made it easier for others to accept him as their disciple. After knowing that Lu Ye made the exploding fire spirit stone, the sect master understood why Pang Zhen asked him. He pondered for a moment and said, "It's a good thing, but the key is whether it can be mass-produced. If it can, it'll be a strategic resource. If it can't, it'll just be a novelty. It can be useful, but it won't help the general situation. Just ask Qian Wudong if it can be mass-produced. Anyway, as far as I know, all the law department's troops have been equipped with one recently. Even the dispatch department got a share." Chao Yi said lightly. Everyone knew that Qian Wudong, the head of the law department, and Fan Xiangyi, the head of the dispatch department, had a good relationship. The dispatch department basically had a share of everything the law department had. Everyone looked at Qian Wudong. Under such circumstances, Qian Wudong couldn't hide anything. In fact, he didn't have to control the distribution of the exploding fire spirit stone. It was related to the general situation of the war province. Even if he was the head of a department, he couldn't do as he pleased. However, no matter what, his soldiers had to be equipped with the exploding fire spirit stone first. In a month, they had already been equipped. It didn't matter if they transferred the distribution of the exploding fire spirit stone. It would save them some trouble. Please enter the latest update in your browser. Check it in the Essence library. We'll provide you with the latest update of Momo's The Great Saint of Human Tao. Please save your bookmark so that you can check the latest update of this book next time. Chapter 1067. Exploding Fire Spirit Stone. Let's fight one-on-one. Chapter 1068. Of course, they couldn't let him go. Lu Ye was a member of the law division, so there was no room for discussion. The production is actually limited because Lu Ye is the only one who can make this thing. I've tried to find a refiner to make it, but the results were unsatisfactory. All right. How much can he make in a day? Chao Yi asked anxiously. Not much, about 700 or 800 a day. All right. The Palace of Light fell silent for a moment, and everyone began to think quickly. 700 to 800 a day, that would be more than 20,000 a month. Moreover, each of these array discs could be used by more than 5 people at the same time. Even 10 people could use them at the same time. If one were to take a compromise, the monthly output would be enough to equip more than 100,000 cultivators. It was a strategic weapon of mass destruction. Chao Yi was anxious. He looked at Peng Zhen. Deputy, I strongly request that Lu Ye be transferred to the Quartermaster Division. This way we can make the most of his value and strengthen the military in the shortest time possible. All right. You're dreaming. Qian Wudong glanced at him. Chao Yi shouted angrily, Is this how you talk to your senior? There's no need to respect those who take advantage of their seniority. All right. The two of them started quarreling again, each trying to argue for what was right. Peng Zhen tapped the table lightly. Only then did the two stop talking and look at him, waiting for his decision. Of course, everyone already knew what the result would be. The Quartermaster Division is in charge of the supply of military supplies. This formation disc is mysterious and should be distributed by the Quartermaster Division. Peng Zhen said softly. No one expressed their dissatisfaction, and no one interrupted. As for Lu Ye, he can continue to stay in the Law Division. What do you two think? All right. Chao Yi and Qian Wudong had no objections. Also, the fact that the Twin Qi formation disc came from Lu Ye must be kept a secret. Do not leak it out, Peng Zhen said in a low voice. This was a form of protection for Lu Ye. Otherwise, if the 10,000 Devil Ridge knew about this, there might be some trouble. Everyone knew the pros and cons. The argument came to an end just like that. The Quartermaster Division had obtained the authority to distribute the Kindred Spirit Array discs, and the Law Division had one less troublesome matter to deal with. Moreover, in the future, the Quartermaster Division would provide a large number of array discs to the Quartermaster Division, and the Quartermaster Division would definitely make some compensation in terms of distributing other resources. Everyone was well aware of this point, so there was no need to mention it openly. After the meeting, everyone went their separate ways. Qian Wudong and Chao Yi walked out side by side, discussing the transfer of the disc array. It was hard to tell that the two of them were arguing so much that their faces were red and their necks were thick, as if they were about to fight. They fought because they represented different positions. They didn't fight because they were both cultivators of the military province. Cultivators surrounded and chased after him. Lu Ye's identity as a disciple of the Blue Blood sect had already been established, so there was no point in sending her away. When Lu Ye returned to Fragrant Mountain after many twists and turns, the sect master gave up on this idea. Over the past few years, the sects that were about to be erased by Tianji were slowly being reborn. This old man must thank you. If it weren't for you, the Jade Blood sect would be gone by now. If that had really happened, this old man would have become a sinner of the sect. After I die, I won't be able to face my ancestors. Lu Ye immediately panicked. Sect leader, you're too serious. Disciple was just doing his duty. There's no such thing as duty or not duty. Our sect didn't give you many benefits. Instead, since you entered the sect, you've been in constant trouble. The protection this old man can provide is also extremely limited. It's not easy for you to grow up in such an environment. The sect master sighed. For instance, when Lu Ye had been captured, although he had immediately set out to rescue her, the result was that he hadn't been able to save her. For the past 2 years, he had blamed himself for this. Luckily, Lu Ye had returned in one piece, and her cultivation had even soared to the heavens, reaching the divine sea. This old man can see that you're the same as your senior brother. You're both people who are favored by Tianji and can stir up storms. But Lu Ye, your senior brother's matter is a lesson for you. You have to learn from it. I'm not asking you to hide your strength and bide your time. You're a young man. It's good that you dare to think and fight, but no matter what you do in the future, you have to consider your own safety first. In the room, Lu Yi was still working left and right, refining the explosive fire spirit stone while refining the twin chi connection array disk. A golden vortex slowly rotated in front of him, and his cultivation didn't stop. He had been in this state for a month. It was a bit boring, but cultivators were like this. If they couldn't bear the boredom, how could they talk about glory? He suddenly felt something and slowly stopped his movements. He got up and pushed the door open. At a glance, he saw a familiar figure beside the stone table in the courtyard. He hurriedly stepped forward and bowed. Sect leader. Tang Yifeng looked at the disciple in front of him and was relieved. Not bad. You didn't lose an arm or a leg. He stretched out his hand and gestured, "Sit. Sit." Lu Yi sat down, took out a tea set from the storage space, and boiled tea. The sect leader smiled and didn't mention the twin chi connection array disk. He just said, "Actually, when I took you as my disciple in the Evil Moon Valley, this old man had the idea of sending you away after a while." Sit. Lu Yi really didn't know about this and couldn't help but be stunned. Send me to where? It wasn't confirmed at that time, but you also know that this old man didn't intend to maintain the sect at that time. Taking you in was also limited by the rules. The sect's state at that time was really not suitable for taking in new disciples. I understand. Lu Yi nodded. However, something happened later that no one could control. On the way back to Fragrant Mountain with the sect leader, he was ambushed. The sect leader had no choice but to send him to the Spirit Stream battlefield. Later, his identity as a disciple of the Jade Blood sect was exposed, causing a large number of people from the myriad Devil Ridge. This disciple will remember. Lu Yi replied and served the tea she had just brewed. The sect leader took it with relief and sipped it lightly. Lu Yi hesitated for a moment and said, "Sect leader, this disciple has something to report." "Yes." The sect leader drank tea and replied, "In front of this old man, you don't have to worry. If you have anything to say, just say it. This old man has lived for so long and has seen everything. If you have any difficulties, I can still give you a pointer or two." "Yes." Lu Yi took a deep breath. "I saw eldest senior brother." Pft, pft. The sect leader spat out a mouthful of tea. Fortunately, he turned his head away in time, otherwise, he would have spat it all over Lu Ye's face. He wiped his mouth, put down the teacup, and said uncertainly, "What did you say just now? This old man is old, and my hearing is a little bad." Pft. "I saw eldest senior brother," Lu Yi repeated seriously. Before returning, Lu Yi had asked his eldest senior brother if he had any instructions for him. In any case, there were many people in the 9 regions that he was worried about. If he wanted to return to the 9 regions, he could still pass a few words to his eldest senior brother. However, eldest senior brother told him that he didn't need to say anything. It would only add to his worries. If they had a chance to meet in the future, everything would be clear. Lu Yi knew eldest senior brother's concerns. In the hearts of all the people close to him, he had been dead for decades. Time had wiped away many of the pain. If Lu Yi suddenly told them that eldest senior brother was still alive, it would definitely affect them. The key was that eldest senior brother was in the blood refining realm. Even if they knew that eldest senior brother was still alive, they couldn't meet him immediately. Why would they miss him so much? Therefore, Lu Yi didn't intend to tell others that eldest senior brother was still alive. However, he couldn't hide it from the sect master. There were some things that had to be said. The sect master was stunned for a moment. He laughed and said, "What nonsense are you talking about? Your eldest senior brother has been dead for decades. Where can you go to see him?" "Sect master, this disciple is speaking the truth." Looking at Lu Ye's serious expression, the smile on the sect master's face slowly disappeared. His expression became solemn. It's like this. Lu Yi told the sect master about how he was captured by Yu Daiwei, how he met Tai Shan in the small secret realm, and how he thought of a way to collapse the small secret realm. This disciple had the experience of escaping from a small secret realm once before, so I can be considered familiar with it. I thought that after the small secret realm collapsed, this disciple would return to 9 regions. Who would have thought that I would go to a realm called the blood refining realm? He briefly talked about the general situation of the blood refining realm, skipping over his early experiences in the blood refining realm. He mentioned the Shen KC. Several decades ago, eldest senior brother went to the blood refinement realm and established the Jade Blood Holy Land there, which was the only pure land of the human race in the entire realm. The blood race army invaded from all directions, and eldest senior brother led many human cultivators in the Jade Blood Holy Land to resist them, repelling them time and time again. Also, there were more than 70 old seniors there, all of whom were top experts. For example, the 3rd-generation sect master of the Vitality sect, Senior Meng Jie, the 5th-generation sword master of the North Profound Sword sect, Senior Jian Guhong, the 1st Grand Elder of the Tsang Lang sect 200 years ago, Senior Mi Xian, the 2nd-generation Valley Master of the Medicine King Valley, Granny Jiu, and a refiner called Ouyang Zi. It was with the help of these old seniors that the Jade Blood Sacred Ground was able to hold on. Even if the sect master was experienced and knowledgeable and had a calm temperament, he was still shaken by Lu Ye's words. The sect master originally thought that Lu Yi had been deceived. After all, he had never seen Feng Wujiang. Moreover, he was still young. If some expert had used some mysterious method to deceive him, it might not have been impossible. But the more he listened, the more he felt that Lu Ye's words were true. So, for the past 2 years, you weren't trapped in some small secret realm, but in this place called the blood refining realm? Yes. Lu Yi nodded. The sect leader seemed to understand. He raised his hand and pointed to the sky. This is. Only the unfathomable heaven's secret could have such an ability. That's right. The sect master was speechless for a long time. After a while, he laughed loudly. You're actually still alive? This was definitely the best news he had heard in recent years. He had been brooding over the death of his disciple for many years, but he never expected that the person he thought was dead was actually alive and well, just that he was in another domain. Moreover, the sect master smelled something unusual from Lu Ye's story. Not only had his disciple been sent to the blood refining realm, but many top experts he had only heard of but had never seen in person were also sent there. This was obviously a bit thought-provoking. Before I left, eldest senior brother told me not to say anything, but I think you should at least know this. The sect leader stroked his beard and said, Your de Shixiang has his own considerations. His advice is correct. What we're going to say today has passed through my ears. You don't have to say it to anyone else. Otherwise, if word gets out, it will cause chaos among the people. This disciple knows. Please enter the latest update in your browser. Go to the Essence Library to view. To provide you with the latest update of Great God Momos, the Great Sage of Human Tao. In order to be able to see the latest update of this book next time, please keep your bookmark well. Chapter 1068. Great Sage I Saw Eldest Senior Brother. Free reading. Chapter 1069. Since you can come back, how can you go back? The sect master asked. Lu Yi shook his head. I don't have a way for the time being, but I think that since I can go there once, I can definitely go there a second time. It's just that the time is not right yet, so I plan to improve my cultivation in these few years and rush back to help senior brother before the next blood race army besiege the holy land of Jade Blood. He probably didn't need to worry about going back. When the time was right, he would have his own way back. Tianji sent him over to let him witness all kinds of things in the blood refining realm and sent him back. The intention was obvious. The key was to improve his strength as much as possible in these few years and gather as many useful people as possible. Otherwise, when the Blood Race army attacked again, the Holy Land of Jade Blood would be in danger. It was very simple for him to increase his strength, as long as he had enough battle merits. And now, he was refining the explosive fire spirit rock and refining the twin chi connecting branch array disc. Every day, he would obtain a large amount of battle merits, and he would not be lacking in golden spirit sticks. The key was to gather people, which was troublesome for him. This was also one of the reasons why he chose to tell the sect master about the blood refining realm. In terms of connections, the sect master was better than him. After he finished talking about his big senior brother, Lu Yi brought up another matter. Sect master, 2 years ago, I was captured by someone called Yu Daiwei, but there was someone else behind her. Yu Daiwei called him Lord Venerable. At that time, I didn't know who this Lord Venerable was. Later, when I mentioned this matter to Big Senior Brother in the blood refining world, Big Senior Brother recognized that person's background. He said that the Lord Venerable was called Tai Shan and was once his right-hand man. Tai Shan? The sect master was shocked. Shouldn't he be dead? Halfway through his words, he suddenly realized that the dead senior brother was still alive, so it was not strange that Tai Shan was still alive. After calming himself down, the sect master said, Tai Shan was indeed your senior brother's right-hand man. Back then, Tai Shan and Yen Yuxian were your senior brother's right-hand men. They followed your senior brother on expeditions and made a name for themselves. Lu Yi knew that Yen Yuxian used to work under senior brother. He had heard about it from second senior sister, but he didn't expect senior brother to rely on these two so much. Now, one of them had become the lord of the mysterious organization, while the other was capable of suppressing an entire mountain pass by himself. Then why did he make such a bargain? Tai Shan probably felt the death of eldest senior brother, and was tired of the endless conflict between the two camps. Therefore, he wanted to create a third camp that could accommodate the cultivators who were tired of the conflict between the two camps like him. He captured me so that I could help him create this camp. He has something in his hand that seems to be a token to create the third camp. Apparently, only I can use that thing. Lu Yi remembered that the token was a stone plate. At that time, he naturally didn't know what the stone plate was used for, but after chatting with his eldest senior brother many times in the blood refining boundary, he gradually figured out the whole story. The sect leader nodded. Tai Shan's temperament is not bad. It is natural for him to have such thoughts. In fact, he is not the only cultivator in the land of the 9 prefectures who is tired of the confrontation between the two camps. If he can really raise this banner, I'm afraid he will receive the support of many people. There should be many people who are secretly in contact with him and are under his control. What do you mean? Lu Yi looked left and right with a mysterious look. The sect leader was well aware. He raised his hand and spiritual power surged. An invisible barrier covered the small courtyard, isolating it from external forces. Lu Yi raised his hand and waved. A corpse appeared in front of the sect leader. This is, 2 years ago, I led a team to the misty cliff of Mount Mi to carry out a mission. There, I encountered the Chun clan and was invited to enter. In the end, the Chun clan suddenly launched an attack for no reason. I was forced to kill them all. Later on, it was proven that the Chun clan was secretly controlled by Mount Tai. I suspect that they had received instructions from Mount Tai to capture me, but failed. Later on, Yu Daiwei appeared. After Lu Yi disappeared, Xiao Xinghe reported the changes in the Chun clan to the Law Division. The Law Division also sent a Spirit Sea Realm cultivator to investigate the scene. Unfortunately, almost all the Chun clan cultivators died that day. The rest were only mortals. They did not find any useful clues at all. When I returned this time, Yu Daiwei sensed it immediately and wanted to capture me. Before she appeared, this person blocked my way. I fought with him and wanted to capture him alive. In the end, this person died inexplicably. It was exactly the same as the Chun clan cultivators that day. Sect leader, the Chun clan is controlled by Taishan, and this person is also controlled by Taishan. Moreover, they are all loyal to Taishan. Once things go wrong, they will immediately commit suicide. While Lu Yi was speaking, the sect leader checked Zhang Song's corpse, but found nothing. He stood up and said, "So you think that Taishan should be secretly controlling more forces? That's for sure, but I don't know who they are." On the surface, there were only 2 people, but how many were hidden in the dark, only Taishan himself knew. The sect leader pondered for a moment. At this time of chaos in the 9 regions, there is a hidden force that is indeed worrying. Although from the current clues, the purpose of Taishan was only to eliminate the endless confrontation between the 2 camps and did not really want to cause chaos in the 9 regions, there were some things that could not be ignored. The 9 regions was already chaotic enough. No one could stir up trouble in the dark. In this situation, if Taishan used the power in his hands to add fuel to the fire, the 9 regions would only become more chaotic. At that time, the situation would be impossible to deal with. You don't have to worry about these things. This old man will investigate thoroughly in secret. The sect leader raised his hand and put away Zhang Song's corpse. After giving Lu Yi a few more instructions, the sect leader left. The reason he came here was to see Lu Yi, but as a result, he learned a lot of shocking news from Lu Yi, causing him to sigh with emotion. This disciple of his could also come into contact with many secrets unknown to others. This in itself was a manifestation of his strength. After seeing the sect leader off, Lu Yi returned to his room and continued the work at hand. Every 3 days, Cheng Xiu would send a large number of fire spirit stones and materials. Lu Yi worked hard to refine them. Although it was difficult to increase the production of the twin qi-connected formation in a short period of time, the supply of explosive fire spirit stones was endless. In the past, when he refined explosive fire spirit stones for the law department, it was calculated as 1,000 pieces a day. But to him, 1,000 explosive fire spirit stones a day was nothing. As long as he was willing, he could refine tens of thousands of them a day. An endless supply of explosive fire spirit stones meant an endless supply of battle merit. Lu Yi no longer cared about how many battle merits he had accumulated, because his battle merits had slowly accumulated to a level that many people could not reach in their lifetime. This meant that as long as he wanted, he could exchange for golden spiritual sticks at will to cultivate. In the history of the 9 regions, no one had ever been as rich as him. On this day, Lu Yi pushed open the door, jumped up, and rushed to the main hall of the law department. After a while, Lu Yi and Qian Wudong sat at a table in the main hall. Qian Wudong frowned. "You want to take a leave?" There was no other reason for this trip than to ask for a leave of absence from Qian Wudong. "Yes, I have an epiphany and need to go out for a while." Lu Yi said the words he had prepared in advance. Qian Wudong looked at him deeply. "Since you have an epiphany, you should go into seclusion. Why do you have to go out? It is not safe outside. How can a cultivator be safe everywhere?" Lu Yi did not want to waste time with him. "Just tell me if you agree or not." Qian Wudong smiled. "What if I don't agree?" Lu Yi frowned. "My lord, I've already been refining explosive fire spirit stones and disc arrays for 3 months. Even my cultivation base has increased by 1 level. You can't expect me to keep refining like this, right? Even prisoners in prison have time to get some fresh air, not to mention that I'm not a prisoner." Lu Ye's cultivation had increased a month ago. After reaching the Spirit Sea realm, every level of cultivation consumed a lot of resources. It was impossible for others to break through so quickly. But during this time, Lu Ye's golden spirit sticks had not stopped. With the terrifying power of the talent tree, his cultivation speed was naturally faster than others. And this was under the premise that he had been refining continuously. Regardless of whether it was refining the explosive fire spirit rock or the twin chi connecting branch formation disc, it would consume his spiritual power. In other words, He was cultivating and improving his foundation while consuming his spirit energy to break through. If he just cultivated, his cultivation speed would be even faster. Qian Wudong's face turned serious. The twin spirit-connected array disk is very helpful to the current situation. Not only now but even in the future it will be extremely important. Only you can refine it in large quantities, so your safety. I am already a second-order spirit sea realm. I am not a child, sir. If it was someone else, I wouldn't have to worry about it, but since it is you, I have to consider these things. Although Pang Zhen had issued a gag order at the meeting, and none of the spirit sea realm cultivators present would reveal that Lu Yi could refine the twin spirit-connected array disk, he still had to be careful. Why don't you send someone to secretly protect me? Lu Yi proposed. Of course, he knew that this was impossible. Sure enough, Qian Wudong snorted. In the current situation, how can I spare anyone to protect you? Then what should I do? Lu Yi looked at him anxiously. Just stay in Grand Sky City. Qian Wudong knocked on the table. Don't go anywhere. Lu Yi got up and left. Qian Wudong was still threatening him. If you dare to run around, I will find someone to break your legs. Lu Yi thought he was just talking nonsense. Leaving the law department's main hall, he shot up into the sky. Sensing that Lu Ye's aura was getting farther and farther away, Qian Wudong couldn't help but sigh. He also knew that he couldn't stop Lu Yi, but as Lu Ye's boss, he had to show his attitude. What could he do if his subordinate didn't listen to him? He couldn't go out and catch him. As Lu Yi said, he was already a second-order spirit sea realm cultivator. He was no longer a child. Please enter the latest update in your browser. Check it in the Essence Library. To provide you with the latest updates of Great God Momo's Human Race Great Sage. In order to be able to check the latest updates of this book next time, please keep your bookmark well. Chapter 1069 Spirit Sea Free Reading on Leave. Chapter 1070. After leaving Grand Sky City, Lu Yi took out a map to compare and flew in a certain direction. As for Gan Wudong's threat, he didn't take it to heart. How could he take his words seriously? 3 months of cultivation were like a day. During this period, he was constantly refining explosive fire spirit stones and twin spirit connecting array. His days were too boring. He couldn't be compared to those old spirit sea realm cultivators who had been famous for a long time. They could settle down and sit in one place like a stone. In the end, he was just a young man in his early 20s. Young people had the vitality of young people. If he really lived like an old spirit sea realm cultivator, he wouldn't be young anymore. He didn't have to do anything. Even if he just came out for a walk and changed the environment, he could still adjust his mood. The improvement of the spirit sea realm was not only reflected in one's spirit energy storage, but also in the expansion of one's spirit sea. It was an all-round growth. Every level of improvement had a significant increase in strength. Compared to the previous first-order spirit sea realm, the increase in one's spirit energy storage was needless to say. The consumption of so many golden spirit sticks wasn't in vain. His spirit sea was obviously bigger than before, which meant that his divine sense had been strengthened. Lu Yi flew while looking down at the earth below. It was a scene of devastation. Originally, the 9 states was full of outstanding people and beautiful land. However, after the insect race's rampage, there was rarely any greenery on the ground. 4 cultivators who were successful in their cultivation, these effects weren't that great. However, 4 cultivators who weren't very powerful or even mortals, these changes were unbearable pain. Mortals had to eat grains to survive. However, in the current environment, even the best fields had become barren. No one dared to come out and cultivate. Even if there was no guarantee that the insect race wouldn't come out and wreak havoc. In the long run, once the foundation of mortals was shaken, it would affect the entire cultivation world. It could be said that this insect race was the biggest disaster in the history of the 9 states. However, the cultivation world didn't have a good way to deal with it so far. Countless cultivators guarded the four directions and killed the insect race. However, if the source wasn't eliminated, the insect race wouldn't stop. Along the way, he could see groups of cultivators fighting against the insect race from time to time. Especially at the places where the cracks were, battles broke out very frequently. This was because the insectoids crawled out from the cracks in the ground. Most of the Divine Sea Realm warriors were stationed near the cracks of a certain scale. However, no matter how many Divine Sea Realm warriors there were in the military province, they could not outnumber the number of cracks in the ground. Many of the smaller fissures were unguarded, and could only rely on Cloud River tier and True Lake tier cultivators to kill the insects. This was also the reason why there was a shortage of manpower in the 9 prefectures. Lu Yi occasionally made a move and had some success, but it was just a cup of water on a burning cart of firewood. A day later, a city appeared in the distance. The scale of the city was not large. It could only be considered a small city. Cities like this could be seen everywhere in the 9 state. Red River City, the city where Team D9 was now. There was a warrior of the Spirit Sea Realm in the city. Lu Yi didn't conceal himself when he arrived. The warrior sensed his presence and sent out his psychic power. Lu Yi responded with his psychic power as well. This was also a strange way of greeting people in the Spirit Sea Realm. A figure flew up from the city and stood in midair, looking in the direction of Lu Yi. After a while, Lu Yi flew over and stopped 200 feet away from the warrior. The warrior of the Spirit Sea Realm was a middle-aged man. He was a 4th-order Divine Sea Realm cultivator. It was not high but not low. For a small city like Red River City, it was enough. His main task was the same as Li Taibai's. There was nothing for him to do. There were many Cloud River tier and True Lake tier cultivators here, which was enough to deal with most situations. What he needed to do was to kill some Spirit Sea Realm insectoid. Of course, if he encountered an insectoid he couldn't defeat, he could only ask for outside help. There were many top Spirit Sea Realm cultivators in the military province on standby. When they received a request for help, they would rush to help. Lu Yi of the Law Department greets senior brother. Lu Yi bowed first and stated his identity. The middle-aged man returned the greeting. Long River Sect's Shi Yuan. The Long River Sect was a nearby 3rd-grade sect. Red River City was under the rule of the Long River Sect. Now that the insectoid plague was sweeping, it was natural for the Long River Sect to send a Spirit Sea Realm cultivator to guard the Red River City. The defense of the military province adhered to the principle of proximity. The large sects would send their own people to guard the area under their jurisdiction. Only the areas where there were no Spirit Sea Realm cultivators in the middle grade and lower grade sects were located would the province guards send Spirit Sea Realm cultivators there. Lu Yi of the Blue Blood Sect? Shi Yuan suddenly reacted. Yes. Yes. I've heard a lot about you. Shi Yuan greeted him on the surface, but he was secretly shocked. A few years ago, Lu Yi stirred up a storm in the Spirit Stream battlefield, and caused a lot of trouble. His name spread widely in the Myriad Demon Ridge, and many people from Grand Heaven Alliance paid attention to him. Shi Yuan was shocked that in just a few years, Lu Yi had already reached the Spirit Sea Realm. Moreover, he had not just reached the Spirit Sea Realm. From his aura, he was already a 2nd-order Divine Sea Realm cultivator. It was said that the Blue Blood Sect was a tiger that would not fall. It seemed that it was true. Junior brother Lu, what brings you here? Shi Yuan asked after calming himself down. Lu Yi was definitely not here to exchange positions with him. Red River City was under the jurisdiction of the Long River Sect, so if there was a need to exchange positions, it would be a Spirit Sea Realm cultivator from the sect. There was no need to trouble others. I have a few relatives who work for senior brother and were passing by here, so I came to take a look. As Lu Yi spoke, he turned his head and looked towards the city wall. Several figures rushed up the wall, obviously aware of his presence, and were eagerly looking over. Seeing Lu Yi look over, Lin Yinxiu jumped up and waved her hand, as if she was afraid that Lu Yi would not see her. Shi Yuan understood and smiled slightly. So that's how it is. Junior brother Lu, please go ahead, I won't delay you from catching up. Saying so, Lu Yi turned around and flew towards the city wall. In the blink of an eye, he was in front of everyone. Hoopa jumped up from the giant beetle's head and dove into Lu Ye's arms. Lu Ye's eyes were sharp and his hands were quick. He raised his hand and grabbed Hoopa by the neck, lifting it up. Hoopa whimpered, its eyes filled with helplessness. Holding Hoopa, Lu Yi looked at the familiar faces in front of him and smiled. Third senior brother, fourth senior brother. Xiao Xinghe's expression was complicated as he sighed. We can't compare. After not seeing each other for 2 years, junior brother is already at the Spirit Sea realm, but we are still at the True Lake realm. When he first met Lu Yi, his cultivation was the same as Lu Ye's. But now, he was still at the True Lake realm, while Lu Yi was already at the Spirit Sea realm. Although the difference in cultivation level was not too big, there was still a gap in realm. Li Baxian laughed. Once you are junior brother, you will always be junior brother. So what if you are at the Spirit Sea realm? Junior brother, go ahead, senior brothers will catch up soon. To be honest, the progress of their cultivation was not slow. After all of them had good aptitude. Especially in the last 2 years, it was much easier to obtain military merits than before. In the entire 9 regions, the overall strength of the cultivators was steadily rising. But everything was afraid of comparison. With Lu Ye's progress in cultivation, their progress was nothing. Lu Yi smiled. Fourth senior brother is right. I will go ahead and scout the path for senior brothers. Brothers who had not met for a long time naturally had endless things to talk about. But the place was not right, so they could only exchange a few words. Lu Yi turned his head to the side. Lin Yinxiu immediately jumped out and greeted, Captain. Lu Yi laughed. I am not the captain now. Your captain is my third senior brother. Lin Yinxiu thought for a while and changed her words, old captain. Lu Yi was speechless. He looked at Feng Yuechan, senior sister Feng. Feng Yuechan smiled. Your 2 junior brothers have been missing you. You have been back for so long, but you have not come to see them. You finally came today. Lu Yi explained, I was delayed by some things. A strange thought appeared in his mind. According to seniority, Feng Yuechan was his martial niece, but he was used to calling her senior sister. It did not matter to him, but what about fourth senior brother? In the past, everyone thought that eldest senior brother had died long ago, so there were some things that did not need to be investigated. The friendship between childhood sweethearts could not be blocked by seniority. But eldest senior brother was still alive and well. If they had the chance to meet in the future, he did not know if fourth senior brother would be beaten up. What's wrong? Feng Yuechan looked at Lu Yi in confusion. She felt that Lu Ye's gaze was a little strange. Nothing, I just remembered something. Lu Yi could tell the sect master about eldest senior brother's situation, but he could not tell anyone else, not even Feng Yuechan. What could he do even if he told them? The 2 realms were separated by an unknown distance, and it would only disturb one's state of mind. If he had the chance to return to the blood-refining realm in the future, he could bring Feng Yuechan along and let her meet her relative. Looking up at Giant Armor's tall figure, Lu Yi reached out and patted him on the shoulder. Giant Armor grinned foolishly. Didn't you say that the members of Team D9 were replenished? Why are there only a few of you? Lu Yi asked. The team had a full complement of 6 members, but there were only 5 in front of him. Of course, if Yi, who was hiding in Hu Po's body, was included, then there were indeed 6 people. There is one more person preparing to welcome you, junior brother. Li Baxian faintly smiled, looking a little mysterious. Lu Yi sensed something. I know him? You'll know if you know him or not. Everyone flew towards the city. The city was bustling with people. When the insect plague broke out, all the mortals within a radius of 300 miles were gathered in Red River City, so the city was a little crowded now. Fortunately, there were cultivators from the Eternal River sect guarding the city, so the city's security was not bad. However, most of the people were sallow and thin, obviously lacking in food. As everyone landed in a small courtyard, Lu Yi scanned with his divine sense and immediately understood who the sixth member of the team was. It was a reasonable thing. 4 pairs of eyes met. The bright-eyed woman smiled gently, looking like a dignified and knowledgeable young lady. But when she spoke, there was a familiar tone. You didn't get your soul stolen by a wild fox and still know to come back. Not bad. Please enter the latest update in your browser, check it in the Essence library. To provide you with the latest update of Great God Momo's the Great Sage. In order to be able to check the latest update of this book next time, please be sure to keep your bookmark well. Chapter 1070. Great Sage Free Reading in Red River City. Chapter 1071. Hua Si had left the Cloud River battlefield. This meant that the 5 Poisons pool would no longer be able to provide her with any assistance in cultivation. This forbidden area would most likely become like the 1,000 Poisons forest in the Spirit Stream battlefield, becoming unworthy of its name. There are only demons and monsters in the wild. How could there be a fox that can steal souls? Lu Yi looked at her with a smile. Ever since they had returned from the Wushuang continent, they had not seen each other again. Counting the years, it had been almost 3 years. For a young man like Lu Yi, this kind of separation was still very long. But this was the nature of cultivators. They couldn't be like mortal men and women who spent all day together. Each of them had their own matters to attend to. A sudden encounter wouldn't diminish the affection in their hearts because of the passage of time. Instead, it would ferment the feelings in their hearts because of the long-term concern and longing. Besides, how can wild flowers have the fragrance of home flowers? Hua Si was very surprised. Shouldn't it be the other way around? Lu Yi said seriously. Every flower enters its own eye. I don't care about others, I just like home flowers. Hua Si raised her hand to shield her forehead, pretending to say, Where are the home flowers? Why can't I see them? They are in my eyes. Hua Si suddenly blushed and softly said, Nonsense. To the side, 3rd senior brother and 4th senior brother had a look of disdain as they quietly watched the two flirt in public. On the contrary, Feng Yuechan and Lin Yinxiu were watching with great interest. Yi poked her little head out from behind Hua Si and winked at Lu Yi. Lu Yi laughed and waved at her. Look, this is my family's little flower. Yi jumped with joy and rushed into Lu Ye's arms. She hugged him tightly and pinched the flesh on Lu Ye's waist. Next time, don't leave me and Hupo. Lu Yi felt the pain but did not show it on his face. I won't. Only then did Yi release him in satisfaction. After a short while, everyone took their seat. Hua Si served them tea and Xiao Xinghe raised his cup, saying, Come, let us first congratulate little junior apprentice brother on his safe return, second congratulate little junior apprentice brother on reaching the Divine Sea, and third congratulate us on being able to follow in little junior apprentice brother's footsteps. Everyone, let us drink. Lu Yeqi asked, How come there's only tea, there's no wine? Li Baxian smacked his lips. In today's world, we can't even guarantee food to eat. How can we have surplus food to make wine? Xiao Shidi, don't mention the word wine, Xixiang. I haven't tasted wine for more than half a year, I really miss it. Lu Yi laughed and took out a few jars from his storage space, and placed them on the table. Li Baxian's eyes immediately lit up. He opened the jar and refilled everyone's cup. Even the amber was given a bowl. Xiao Xinghe raised his cup again, and everyone drank together. The atmosphere was lively. There was no wine to accompany it, but everyone was still in high spirits, especially Li Baxian, who drank 3 bowls in a row before letting out a satisfied breath. Reuniting after such a long time, They naturally had many things to talk about. They didn't stick to any topic and chatted freely. After a while, Xiao Xinghe asked, "Xiao Shidi, where have you been trapped for more than 2 years?" These words immediately aroused everyone's interest, and they all looked over. Lu Yi pondered for a moment and said, "I can't say exactly where it is for the time being, but I promise that if there's a chance in the future, I'll take everyone to have a look." Returning to the blood-refining realm, he was bound to pull a group of helpers, and Team D9 naturally couldn't escape. To others, he could lie and say that he was trapped in a small secret realm, but to the people close to him, he couldn't lie to them. However, he couldn't say much about the blood-refining realm for the time being, so he could only give this guarantee. Everyone didn't ask further. Since Lu Yi said so, there would be a day when they would know. They weren't in a hurry, and the reason why they asked was only out of concern. Lu Yi then asked about the various things that happened to everyone here, and Xiao Xinghe and Li Baxian talked one after another. They drank until the sky turned dark, and then until dawn. Lu Ye's wine reserve was emptied. Hu Po was sprawled on the ground, snoring so loudly that it shook the heavens. The women's faces were all red, especially Hua Ci, whose neck was glowing with a pink luster. At dawn, a shrill whistle suddenly sounded from the city, and then a large number of cultivators rose into the sky. Xiao Xinghe also stood up and raised his eyebrows. The insect tide is here. Although there are cultivators killing insects everywhere, and it's rare to see insect tides of this scale now, this kind of thing still happens occasionally. This was especially true when powerful divine sea realm insectoids emerged from the fissures. They would lead a large number of insectoids to attack human settlements. Red River City had experienced a few such insectoid waves, but they were all small in scale. Everyone worked together to deal with them. The situation this time was no different. "Xiao Shidi, let's stop drinking today. When the situation stabilizes in the future, we brothers will have a good gathering again." "Okay," Lu Yi replied. Everyone stood up, picked up the last of the wine in their cups, and drank it in one gulp. "Let's go," Xiao Xinghe ordered and flew into the air. The others followed closely behind, and even Hua Ci, a medical cultivator, was no exception. When she flew into the air, she raised her hand and waved. In the distortion of space, a huge golden toad appeared out of thin air. She stood on the toad's head and smiled at Lu Yi. "Don't die." "All right." Lu Yi was still looking at her golden toad. He didn't know where Hua Ci found this thing, but now it seemed very likely that it came from a dangerous place like the Five Poison Pool. Hearing Hua Ci's words, he quickly nodded. Although they had only been together for a short time, although there were still a lot of things to say, although he couldn't bear to part, Lu Yi knew that this was the only way. His friends had their own paths, and he also had his own things to do. It was like the water of a river. When they started from the source, they embraced and protected each other, but in the process of flowing, there would be many forks and tributaries. However, as long as they continued to flow, they would eventually meet in the sea. The insect tide was about to arrive. As the only divine ocean realm cultivator in the city, Shi Yuan was arranging his subordinate. From the current situation, the scale of the insect tide this time wasn't large, and Red River City's defenses could completely resist it. What made him feel a little troubled was that there were more than 10 divine ocean realm insects in the insect tide this time. Due to the insect race's low intelligence, human cultivators could easily fight against many of the same level of cultivation. However, once the number of insects increased to a certain extent, it would be very difficult to deal with them. It was true that the insect race's intelligence was low, but they had their own areas of expertise, and that was their various strange abilities, especially the sturdy defense provided by their thick carapaces. In the 2 years that the insect tide had swept through the 9 prefectures, many divine ocean realm cultivators of the human race had lost their lives due to carelessness. Shi Yuan didn't want to follow in their footsteps. He was hesitating whether to ask for reinforcements when he suddenly saw a ray of light soaring into the sky somewhere in the city. Immediately after, the ray of light made a turn in mid-air and brazenly charged in the direction of the insect tide. Shi Yuan was shocked, but he quickly reacted. The figure that charged out was Liu Ye, who had come to Red River City yesterday. As expected, he was young and impetuous, but his actions were a little reckless. Before he could stop him, the ray of light had already charged into the insect tide. Immediately after, Shi Yuan saw a scene that shocked him. As the saber light surged, it stirred up a storm of blood wherever it went, as if it was plowing a courtyard. It plowed a vacuum in the insect tide. Regardless of whether it was Cloud River Realm or True Lake Realm insects, it was difficult for them to fight back. In the blink of an eye, the figure charged into the center of the insect tide, where the divine ocean realm insects gathered. It was still a sharp saber light. Even with Shi Yuan's eyesight, he couldn't even catch the traces of the figure's movements. In his field of vision, the divine ocean realm insects were dismembered one after another. Insect blood and wine fell to the ground, and severed limbs flew into the air. After a few back and forth, the huge insect tide was directly divided, and the dozen or so divine ocean realm insects were all killed without exception. The ray of light quickly flew away, and a voice came from afar. The mountains are high and the rivers are long. Senior brothers and sisters, let's meet again another day. Shi Yuan stared at it, and his mind was shaken for a long time. Only then did he let out a sigh of relief. His reputation is well deserved. A few years ago, Liu Ye of the Jade Blood sect stirred up a big storm, but that was only in the Spirit Stream realm and Cloud River realm. To be honest, other than the Divine Ocean Realm cultivators who had been paying attention to him, most of the Divine Ocean Realm cultivators didn't pay much attention to him. Those who could show off their strength in the Spirit Stream realm and Cloud River realm might not be able to do anything in the True Lake realm or Divine Ocean realm, let alone raise their strength in the Divine Ocean realm. The growth of a cultivator was always accompanied by all kinds of accidents. Moreover, someone like Liu Ye, who showed off his ability in the beginning, might not be able to go far. In fact, in recent years, Shi Yuan hadn't heard of Liu Ye doing anything big. In the eyes of people, this was a sign that his potential had been exhausted. But after seeing him today, Shi Yuan knew that some people were destined to shine. Even if it was only a short silence, there would be a time when they would erupt fiercely. Shi Yuan was a fourth-order Divine Ocean Realm cultivator, 2 realms higher than Liu Ye, but even if he had 10 times the courage, he couldn't single-handedly charge into the enemy's den like Liu Ye. If he really did that, he was afraid that he wouldn't be able to return alive. The rise of Liu Ye of the Jade Blood sect was already somewhat unstoppable. Calming his mind, Shi Yuan shouted, "Open the array, kill the enemy!" Originally, he planned to rely on Red River City's defensive array to block the enemy. This was a safe and secure method that would minimize the losses on his side. However, many cultivators in the city had seen the scene of Liu Ye sweeping away the enemy with their own eyes. They were all excited and their fighting spirit was high. If he continued to act according to his original plan, it would only waste their morale. Since that was the case, he might as well kill his way out. An insect tide without a Divine Ocean Realm cultivator was not enough. With an order, the defensive array was removed. Many cultivators rushed forward like a torrent to meet the chaotic insect race. A small-scale battle immediately began. Liu Ye was already several hundred kilometers away. He didn't kill the insect race not because he didn't want to, but because there was no need to. For the current cultivators of the 9 provinces, the insect race was a walking achievement. If he killed too many, the benefits for others would be reduced. However, since he had encountered it, he couldn't just sit back and watch. Killing the Divine Ocean Realm insects in the insect tide was the best way to deal with it. As for the remaining insect race, he could leave it to the cultivators of Red River City. Please enter the latest update in your browser, check it in the Essence Book Pavilion. To provide you with the latest updates of Great God Momo's Human Race Great Sage. In order to be able to check the latest updates of this book next time, please be sure to save your bookmark. Chapter 1071 Invincible Jia Hua and Wildflower read for free. Chapter 1072 Flying through the air, Lu Yi traveled at a leisurely pace. When Shifeng left vast Sky City, he had two things to do. The first was to visit third senior brother, fourth senior brother, and the others in Red River City. He had already done that. The second thing was to go to the front line where the two camps were fighting. Lu Ye's main body had already broken through to the second-order Divine Sea Realm, but his avatar was still the same, so Lu Yi had to recondense his avatar to the second-order Divine Sea Realm. Only then would his avatar be able to display greater strength. The prerequisite for condensing a clone was to retrieve the original clone. Therefore, Lu Yi had to make a trip no matter what. Fortunately, he had reached the Divine Sea Realm very quickly, so it wouldn't take too long. Another day later, Lu Yi had already crossed the front line of Grand Sky Alliance and arrived at the center of Shocking Waves Lake Pass and Dark Moon Forest Pass. It wasn't good to go any further as he would reach the Dark Moon Forest Pass defensive zone. He was a member of Grand Sky Alliance after all. Although the two camps hadn't reached a truce, they had tacitly stopped fighting and focused on fighting against the insect plague. If he rashly entered the Myriad Demon Ridge's defensive zone, it might cause unnecessary misunderstandings. He found a crack in the ground and dived in. He killed the nearby insectoids and waited quietly. A sword light swept across the sky. His clone, Li Tai Bai, stood on the sword light and rushed towards his main body. It had to be said that among all the schools, sword cultivators were the most elegant when it came to flying on their swords. No other school could compare to this. Along the way, they would occasionally meet some Myriad Demon Ridge cultivators who were hunting insects outside. They would all stop and salute respectfully. In these 3 months, Li Tai Bai had made quite a name for himself in the Dark Moon Forest Pass. Every time he took action, he was always successful. Many cultivators in the Myriad Devil Ridge were indebted to him for saving their lives. The cultivators of Dark Moon Forest Pass loved and respected this new little pass master from the bottom of their hearts. Lin Yu was also very satisfied with his performance. Ever since she had Li Tai Bai, the burden on her body had been greatly reduced. She was no longer as tired as before. Now she was glowing every day. Spreading out his divine sense, he monitored the surroundings. After making sure that there was no one around, he plunged into the fissure below. A moment later, the avatar stood in front of Lu Yi. Lu Yi raised his hand and placed it on the avatar's chest. The roots of the talent tree extended and entered the avatar's body. In the blink of an eye, the avatar Li Tai Bai disappeared, leaving behind only the scarlet dragon battle robe and the sword gourd. The moment Lu Yi raised his hand to catch it, the spirit energy around his body suddenly burst forth. His entire body turned into a stream of light as he flew to the side. While he was in the air, the sword chi from the sword gourd flew towards a certain direction. At the same time, he raised his hand and pulled out the mountain blade at his waist. His body followed closely behind the sword chi as he slashed down. Where the sword light wreaked havoc, the void distorted, and a figure appeared out of thin air. The sudden attack, coupled with the shock in his mind, caused the figure to be flustered. He barely managed to block the onslaught of the many sword lights, but another sharp saber light came at him. In a hurry, his berserk spirit energy surged, transforming into a massive impact that met the saber light. With a boom, spirit energy surged, and Lu Ye's body uncontrollably retreated. The figure that had suddenly appeared also retreated a dozen steps before stabilizing himself. Several dozen meters away, Lu Yi raised his saber, his eyes drooping as he expressionlessly looked ahead. He had been careless. When the avatar had arrived, there had been a tail following behind him. It was none other than Lu Yueme from the Startling Waves Lake Pass. Lu Yi didn't know what method Lu Yueme had used to conceal her figure and aura, but it clearly wasn't her own ability. From what he knew, Lu Yueme was a magic cultivator. Even if her cultivation was much higher than the Avatar's, it was impossible for her to conceal herself so perfectly. When the Avatar had arrived, it had been paying attention to the surroundings. There had been no abnormalities at all, or else the Avatar wouldn't have rushed down to meet up with the main body. As for why Lu Yueme had followed the Avatar, there was no need to think about it. Naturally, it was to harm the Avatar. This woman harbored a grudge against Li Tai-bai. Back then, in order to avenge her son, she didn't hesitate to use the power of the Startling Waves Lake Pass. During the battle, she didn't care about anything else and only attacked Li Tai-bai in order to kill him with her own hands. In that battle, she had used her spiritual energy on Li Tai-bai and attacked fiercely. She had thought that Li Tai-bai would definitely die, and it could be considered as her revenge. After that, news of Li Tai-bai's death had indeed spread from the Dark Moon Forest Pass, and the matter had come to an end. However, in recent months, Li Tai-bai had frequently taken action to save the cultivators of the Myriad Demons Ridge. Occasionally, he would also encounter some cultivators of the Grand Heaven Alliance. Lu Yueme was in charge of the Startling Waves Lake Pass. As long as one wasn't blind or deaf, they would naturally receive some news about Li Tai-bai. How could Lu Yueme tolerate the fact that the enemy who had killed her son had come back to life? Since the day she received the news, she had been thinking about how to kill Li Tai-bai. It wasn't a wise move to make a move so blatantly. It wasn't because she was considering the current situation of the two camps. She had to avenge her son. To a woman like her, the two camps had nothing to do with her. As long as she could kill Li Tai-bai and avenge her son, she wouldn't hesitate to start another war between the two camps. However, she was the only Spirit Sea Realm cultivator in the Startling Waves Lake Pass. The original leader of the Startling Waves Lake Pass, Che Xiong, had been transferred away. On the other hand, there was still Lin Yu at the Dark Moon Forest Pass. If she couldn't kill Li Tai-bai in one strike, Lin Yu would definitely intervene. At that time, she might not be able to win against two opponents. Moreover, Li Tai-bai's range of activity had always been small, and he didn't give Lu Yueme too many opportunities. Until today, when Li Tai-bai crossed the middle line between the two camps, Lu Yueme secretly followed him. When she saw the opportunity, she sneaked into the fissure and waited for the opportunity to make a move. In this kind of environment, coupled with her cultivation far exceeding Li Tai-bai's, she was confident that she could end the battle in less than half a cup of tea's time. As for what problems would arise after killing Li Tai-bai, she didn't even bother to think about it. Her plan was very good. In order to not be noticed by Li Tai-bai, she even used an extremely precious artifact to smoothly sneak into the fissure with Li Tai-bai. However, before she could take action, she saw an incomprehensible scene. Lu Ye was actually waiting here. When Li Tai-bai stepped forward, Lu Ye raised his hand and Li Tai-bai disappeared. Even if Lu Yueme was a 7th-order Divine Sea Realm cultivator, she was still shocked by this scene and, for a moment, accidentally revealing a trace of her aura. What followed was what happened just now. As their four eyes met, all kinds of thoughts flashed across Lu Ye's mind. Although he didn't know how things had reached this point, he could still guess the general situation. It wasn't that he wasn't careful enough, it was just that there was no such thing as being a thief for 1,000 days. Lu Yueme came from the Heavenly Yuan sect, so she must have some rare treasures on hand. Coupled with her high cultivation, if she really wanted to hide, it would be difficult for his clone to detect her. As these thoughts flashed through his mind, Lu Ye's murderous intent soared. It wasn't that Li Tai-bai's identity couldn't be exposed. If it was exposed, so be it. At worst, his clone wouldn't go to the Dark Moon Forest Pass, so there wouldn't be any substantial losses. It was just that in the current situation, even if he was willing to compromise, Lu Yueme wouldn't. Not to mention the fact that his clone Li Taibai had killed her son, Lu Yueme wouldn't let this matter go. Even his main body had some grievances with Lu Yueme. When he had transferred his third senior brother from the Dark Moon Forest Pass, Lu Yueme had chased them all the way back. If it weren't for the sect master and Gon Wu Dang arriving in time, the consequences would have been unimaginable. At that time, his cultivation wasn't high, so he couldn't fight back against Lu Yueme and could only be beaten like a punching bag. If it weren't for the golden body token, he would have already died. Now, with the passage of time, he had the capital to compete with her. While he was filled with murderous intent, Lu Yueme also revealed her murderous intent. In the end, she was an experienced and knowledgeable person, so although she was shocked by the strange scene she had just witnessed, she quickly reacted. Li Taibai was Lu Ye's clone. She couldn't figure out how Lu Ye, a mere artifact cultivator, could cultivate such an exquisite clone technique. This kind of mysterious secret technique was generally something only the top cultivators were qualified to master. Even she hadn't even crossed the threshold yet, let alone used it. But this didn't hinder her determination to eradicate Lu Ye here. For her, this was a pleasant surprise. Li Taibai had killed her son, so he had to be eliminated. Lu Ye wasn't a good person either. She had tried to kill him but failed, so their relationship had worsened, so there was no possibility of reconciliation. Lu Ye's cultivation had advanced at an incredible speed. In just 2 or 3 years, he had already reached the second-order Divine Sea Realm. In the future, his cultivation would definitely surpass hers. At that time, there was no guarantee he wouldn't come to settle accounts with her. If she could eliminate Lu Ye at this time, it would be tantamount to removing one of her biggest worries. How could Lu Yueme let go of such a good opportunity? This thought flashed through the minds of the two, but in the next moment, Lu Yi raised his blade and rushed towards Lu Yueme like a bolt of lightning. At the same time, Lu Yueme raised her hand and launched a series of spells at Lu Yi. At the same time, she quickly retreated. There was no exchange of words as both sides understood each other's intentions. This was destined to be a battle to the death. Lu Yueme came from a famous sect and her aptitude was quite good. Her combat experience was extremely rich, so she naturally knew that as an artifact cultivator, what she feared the most was being approached by an artifact cultivator, even if the artifact cultivator's cultivation was far inferior to hers. Seeing so many exquisite secret techniques, Lu Yueme's heart sank. She expected that with the gap between their cultivations, once she used her secret techniques, Lu Ye would be flustered to deal with them. However, to her surprise, Lu Ye's saber technique was impenetrable, and the secret techniques she sent towards him were all shattered. Amidst the chaos, Lu Ye's figure rapidly approached her. How was this a second-order Divine Sea Realm cultivator? With the strength Lu Ye was showing now, it wouldn't be an exaggeration to call him a fifth-order Divine Sea Realm cultivator. Chapter 1073. The killing intent in Lu Yueme's heart burned even more fiercely as she unleashed her spells. Lu Ye had always been famous for being able to kill enemies above his level. Judging from this brief exchange of blows, his reputation was indeed well-deserved. Therefore, she could not allow him to continue to grow. Otherwise, she would not be his opponent in a few years' time. With this thought in mind, Lu Yueme's attacks became even more ruthless. She did not have any intention of probing Lu Ye's strength at all. All of a sudden, the cracks in the ground were filled with spells that blotted out the sky and earth. Among them, there were a few thick thunderbolts that rumbled. The Heaven Yuan sect was a sect that produced many spell cultivators, especially those of the lightning element. This might have something to do with their sect's treasure, the destructive lightning spear. Among the many spells, the lightning element was the most violent. Its lethality was also the most terrifying. Compared to other elements, it was also the fastest. As soon as these bolts of lightning appeared, the clear sky exploded. Lu Ye's attack was immediately blocked. As the Pan Mountain saber slashed apart the lightning, his entire body stiffened. Lightning quickly swam around the surface of his body. How could Lu Yueme miss such a good opportunity? More bolts of lightning shot towards Lu Yi. She was determined to kill him in one fell swoop. Lu Ye's hair stood on end. It was not because he was agitated by the lightning, but because he instinctively sensed danger. He rarely suffered in front of a spell cultivator. Even when he fought against Yu Daiwei last time, he was not at a disadvantage. But that battle was completely different from this one. Yu Daiwei did not have any intention of killing him. She was only following Tai Shan's orders to capture Lu Yi alive. So, although she fought fiercely with Lu Yi, she did not have the heart to fight to the death. Lu Yi also did not have the heart to fight at that time. That battle was purely to test his own strength. But this time, whether it was him or Lu Yueme, both of them had the intention of killing the other. The ferocity of their attacks was completely different from before. Thunder rolled over. Lu Ye's body was still a little stiff, so it was difficult for him to dodge such an attack. In a hurry, Hu Po, who was crouching on his shoulder, let out a tiger roar and leaped out. His small body expanded in the wind, and in the blink of an eye, he revealed his true form. Demonic chi surged, and his ferocious aura soared to the sky. The lightning struck Hu Po's body, instantly scorching Hu Po's skin and flesh. Hu Po shrank back to the size of a cat and fell straight down the fissure. A hand reached out and scooped Hu Po up. It was Lu Yi, who had recovered. He raised his hand and placed Hu Po on his shoulder. Once again, he faced the storm of spells and charged forward. After suffering a loss, Lu Yi had become much more cautious. He avoided Lu Yueme's many spells as much as he could. If he couldn't avoid them, he would meet them with his saber. As for lightning spells, he wouldn't even touch them. Lightning spells were indeed violent and powerful, but they had a huge flaw, and that was that they weren't easy to control. Unlike other spells, where a spell cultivator could still control them slightly after casting them, lightning spells were cast out instantly. Because their speed was too fast, there was no way to control them. This gave Lu Yi room to dodge. Of course, one's eyesight had to be accurate and one's movements had to be fast. Otherwise, he would still be struck. The environment below the fissure was complex. If a true lake stage cultivator came here, they might be greatly affected when moving around. However, spiritual sea stage cultivators had spiritual sense to monitor them. Although they would be affected to a certain extent, it wasn't obvious. Two figures quickly swept through the fissure, one in front and one behind. Wherever they passed, the world energy around them would become chaotic. Lu Yi felt more and more that he lacked a way to quickly approach his enemy. Last time, when he fought with Yu Daiwei, he had this feeling, and this time, it was even more so. If he could quickly approach his enemy, not to mention Lu Yueme, who was only a 7th-order Divine Sea Stage cultivator, even if she was a 9th-order Divine Sea Stage cultivator, she would still be able to withstand a few slashes from his saber. If he was facing a spell cultivator of the same level, it would be too difficult for Lu Yi to get close. When a spell cultivator used their spells, their speed would be greatly affected, giving Lu Yi an opportunity to close in. But after returning to the 9 states, he had met 2 female spell cultivators, one 8th-order Divine Sea Stage and the other 7th-order Divine Sea Stage cultivators. Their cultivations were far above his, and the gap between their cultivations couldn't be closed. This made it very difficult for him to get close to them. Lu Yi originally wanted to show weakness to his enemy, then launch a sudden attack to settle the score, but after fighting for less than 10 breaths, he gave up on this plan. Although Lu Yueme was a woman, she was also a battle veteran. As a spell cultivator, she wouldn't easily give him an opportunity to get close to her. Moreover, as they fought, Lu Yi clearly felt a powerful aura awakening below the fissure. It was definitely a divine sea realm insect race cultivator who had probably been alarmed by the battle above. What was even more uncomfortable was that these powerful insect race cultivators were rapidly approaching from below. Once these insect race cultivators entered the battlefield, the situation would inevitably become chaotic. At that time, it would be difficult to kill Lu Yueme. If Lu Yueme escaped today, the fact that Li Taibai was his clone would inevitably be exposed. He couldn't continue fighting like this. He couldn't give Lu Yueme a way out, nor could he give himself a way out. Since there were many things he couldn't do, he had to go all out. Lu Yi raised his hand and took out an object, poured his spirit energy into it, and threw it straight at Lu Yueme. Lu Yueme saw Lu Ye's movements and saw a ball of light quickly rushing towards her. She hurriedly urged her spirit techniques to meet it. Although she didn't know what Lu Yi had thrown at her, she still had her guard up. What surprised her was that all her spirit techniques had no effect. Hitting the ball of light was no different from hitting nothing. There was also an inexplicable force that descended from the sky and fell on her body, resonating with the ball of light. Only then did Lu Yueme see what was inside the ball of light. The battle ring. How could she be unfamiliar with this thing? Thinking back to that day, when Lu Yi came to Shocking Wave Lake Pass to recruit Xiao Xinghe, he'd utilized the combat arena. In the end, it caused one of her capable subordinates to perish on the spot, causing her plans to fail. But she didn't expect that after 2 or 3 years, Lu Yi would summon the battle ring again, and this time it was against her. In the battle arena, it was a fight to the death. There would always be only one person who could walk out alive. Lu Yueme was furious. She admitted that Lu Yi's strength was amazing, and he had the foundation to kill enemies above his realm. This could be seen from the brief exchange just now, but there was also a limit to surpassing one's realm. What gave him such confidence that he dared to use the battle ring against her? The battle ring. There was no time to think about it. The light flashed and the figures of Lu Yi and Lu Yueme both disappeared. The violent spirit energy fluctuations slowly subsided, but below the crack, the movements of Taoan and Rong Rong were getting louder and louder. A moment later, a large number of insects, led by many divine sea realm insects, crawled out from the depths of the ground and swarmed out. In the space of the battle ring, as soon as Lu Yueme appeared, she spread out her spirit sense and quickly locked onto Lu Ye's position. He was just a few dozen meters away from her, not much different from before she entered the battle ring. But the scene imprinted in her eyes startled her, because Lu Ye's appearance at the moment had changed greatly. His whole body was wrapped in rich qi and blood, and his whole body was blooming with blood-red light. His figure was obviously taller and more slender, and the breath on his body had become extremely strange, as if there were traces of the demonic beast's spirit energy mixed in. But it was undeniable that at this moment, his breath had become extremely violent and oppressive. Looking carefully, there was an extra tail of spirit energy behind Lu Yi, and the word king was faintly discernible on his forehead. If someone who didn't know better saw this appearance, they would think that he was an incomplete demonic beast. But Lu Yueme knew that this was the Beast Tamer School's beast transformation secret technique. In the 9 regions, there were many schools, and the Beast Tamer School was only one of them. But the Beast Tamer School had always been in an awkward position, because their strength was completely dependent on the number and quality of the demonic beasts under their command. Moreover, because they placed too much emphasis on external forces like the Yanshi school, they couldn't go too far on the road of cultivation. There were many low-level cultivators, but very few strong ones. But this situation was broken a few years ago. In the Tianji treasury of the 9 regions, there were some jade slips about the supreme mysteries of the Beast Tamer School, and many Beast Tamer School cultivators regarded them as treasures. There were also Beast Tamer School cultivators in the Heavenly Yuan sect, so Lu Yueme wasn't completely unaware of these things. She knew that the strongest mystery of the Beast Tamer School was the beast transformation secret technique that could fuse with one's life source demonic beast. Lu Yi also cultivated the Beast Tamer School. This guy indeed had a demonic beast following him. Just now, that demonic beast even risked its life to protect its master, using its own body to block her lightning. It was reasonable for Lu Yi to cultivate the beast tamer school. But what Lu Yueme didn't expect was that this guy could actually use the beast transformation secret technique. This was something that many cultivators who majored in beast taming could not do. Many secret techniques had appeared in the heavenly secret treasure trove for several years, and basically all the cultivators of the beast taming school would buy a copy to study. However, up until now, how many people had been able to fuse with their own life beasts? At the very least, Lu Yueme had never heard of anyone who could do this. Today was the first time she had seen it. It was inconceivable that a weapon cultivator had cultivated the secret of the clone and displayed the strongest mystery of the beast tamer school. What kind of monstrous talent was this? Many thoughts flashed through her mind, but it didn't stop her from raising her hand to kill the enemy. It was still the endless power of the spell, maintaining a violent offensive. It had always been the only way for spell cultivators to kill the enemy. The enemy could block 1 or 2 spells, but as long as the rhythm of the attack was in the hands of the spell cultivator, then the enemy would always make mistakes. But with Lu Ye's actions, Lu Yueme was shocked. The moment the red light flashed, she almost lost sight of Lu Yi. Compared to before, Lu Ye's current speed could be described as skyrocketing. His movements and turns were also much more agile than before. This wasn't just due to the beast transformation, but also the support of the blood-stained spirit pattern. Since he had decided to go all out, he wouldn't hold back. Therefore, the moment he entered the battle stage, Lu Yi exploded a drop of essence blood, using the power of the essence blood to activate the blood-stained spirit pattern and beast transformation. It was the same as what he thought back in the blood refinement realm. The power of essence blood saved him a lot of time, so he didn't need to slowly accumulate power and could directly activate his killer move. His body was like a swimming dragon as he rushed forward. Amber's tender voice sounded in his heart. "Use me in the battle, use me to be invincible. Please enter the latest update in your browser, check it in the Essence Library. To provide you with the latest update of Great God Momos, the Great Sage of Human Tao. In order to be able to check the latest update of this book next time, please keep your bookmark well." Chapter 1073. Beast Tamer School Go All Out to Read for Free. Chapter 1074. Shrouded in a blood-red light, Lu Ye's figure dashed forward like a wolf, dodging one technique after another as he rapidly closed the distance between him and Lu Yueme. As he rushed forward, he sent out a series of saber waves, each of which was like a crescent moon, cutting through the void and attacking the enemy from various angles. Lu Yueme gritted her teeth and madly pushed her spirit energy to cast a number of exquisite techniques, attacking Lu Yi to obstruct his advance while resisting the incoming saber waves. For a time, she was going all out. This was something she hadn't expected before she attacked. She had thought that there was a huge gap in strength between them, and even if Lu Yi had the reputation of being able to fight above his realm, it would at most take her some effort to defeat him. However, not long after the battle began, she was forced to go all out. The strength Lu Yi displayed made her have no choice but to treat him as an opponent on the same level. Both of them were defending and attacking at the same time, but one was retreating while the other was advancing. For a time, the area between the two was filled with techniques and saber waves, creating a lively atmosphere. However, Lu Yueme knew that this environment was extremely disadvantageous for her because this was the space of the battle stage. Although this space was barely enough for her to move around and display her skills, it was still limited and not as spacious as the outside world. Normally, when facing an opponent who was 5 minor realms lower in cultivation, Lu Yueme could have easily used her divine sense to obstruct and interfere, perhaps even clinching victory with her divine sense attack. But at this moment she could not afford to be distracted, because even if she went all out, the distance between them was rapidly closing. Lu Ye's movements were too fast, so fast that she could barely lock onto her opponent's aura with her divine sense. As he ran, this person was like a wild beast. His entire body exuded a violent aura. Even though her cultivation was higher, this kind of aura that wanted to devour everything still made her heart palpitate. She could only gamble that Lu Yi wouldn't be able to maintain this state for long. This also coincided with some of the drawbacks of cultivators using explosive means. Although they could gain more strength in a short time, they couldn't maintain it for long. A figure flashed in front of her as Lu Yi rushed forward. It had only been 5 breaths since they entered the battle stage. She was a 7th-order Divine Sea Dharma cultivator, yet an Engineer Realm weapon cultivator managed to get close to her. Although she had expected it, it was still too fast. Seeing Lu Ye's blade coming down, Lu Yueme had no intention of dodging. At such a close distance, she might not be able to dodge, and even if she did, her aura would be weaker than her opponent's. What followed would be an endless pursuit. So, she raised her hand and summoned an object. At the same time, she raised her other hand. Lightning swam between his 5 fingers. With a loud crack, the lightning surged. At the moment the Pan Mountain blade slashed down, Lu Yueme's body was covered in a layer of dazzling light. It was a protective spiritual treasure that she had activated. This was a necessary defensive measure for magic cultivators. Their physical bodies were weaker than those of the other factions, so in terms of defense, they relied on external objects other than their own spells. A cultivator at Lu Yueme's level naturally wielded a spirit treasure. Lu Ye's blade-wielding right arm swelled slightly for an instant. The color of the blood and qi on his arm became a bit denser than the rest of his body. The Pan Shan saber instantly slashed down. It looked like a single slash, but in reality, there were at least 7 or 8 slashes. Consecutive slashes. In such a situation, this simple technique was the most practical. It was even more practical than the Tyrant Saber technique. When the blade fell, a thick bolt of lightning also attacked him head-on. Having suffered a loss just now, Lu Yi naturally knew the power of this thunder attribute spell. But at such a close distance, there was no way he could dodge. So, when the Pan Shan saber slashed down, several layers of defensive spirit runes appeared on his chest. When the cracking sound was heard, Lu Yueme's expression changed. The protective light on her body caved in fiercely, its color instantly dimming. Extremely heavy. Incomparably sharp. This was what Lu Yueme felt when the long saber slashed down. One could imagine that if she hadn't activated her protective spiritual treasure in time, her weak body would have been split in 2. It was a saber that had chopped down, but what landed on his body was like a mountain with a sharp blade. This was an extremely contradictory feeling. As soon as the 2 figures came into contact, they were sent flying. Although Lu Yueme's protective spiritual treasure blocked the violent attack, the power of the attack itself couldn't be dispelled. Lu Yi, on the other hand, was bombarded by the power of the lightning. The many layers of defensive spirit runes he had hurriedly erected were also shattered. This showed the terrifying power of the attack. Before it could be completely dispelled, lightning snakes slithered around his body in the air, covered by the blood-red light, causing his hair to stand on end. He lowered his body and slid back more than 100 feet before he could barely stabilize himself. Without any pause, he pounced on Lu Yueme again. Behind him, waves of air exploded, visible to the naked eye. At the same time, many spell arts suddenly came crashing down on Lu Yueme. Lu Yueme turned pale with fright. She had no idea where these spell arts came from. At this moment, her body was unstable. Under the huge impact, the blood in her chest was in turmoil. She could only activate her protective spiritual treasure. Many spell arts fell on her body, but they were all blocked by her protective spiritual treasure. She was not harmed in the slightest. Even the light around her body didn't dim. Finally stabilizing her body, Lu Yueme glanced around and saw a young girl with a delicate figure and an ethereal temperament standing in the corner of the battle stage, urging her spell arts to attack her. "Who is this?" Where did she come from? Lu Yueme couldn't be blamed for being blind. After entering the battle stage, all her attention had been focused on Lu Yi. What's more, she didn't expect that there would be a third party inside the battle stage. This was completely illogical. The battle stage was a unique treasure, and only the person who activated it and those who were implicated would be dragged into this space. It was absolutely impossible for others to enter, because this was a spatial battlefield that had been opened up by the unfathomable mysteries of heaven. In the 9 provinces, who could be stronger than Heaven Ji? To her, this young girl's cultivation wasn't high, only true Lake Realm's 6th or 7th order. Normally, she could easily destroy such an enemy and the other party's attacks wouldn't be able to harm her. But at this moment, her enemy was Lu Yi, and the sudden appearance of such a variable gave her a headache. It was only natural that Yi would appear on the battle stage. Lu Yi had activated his beastification secret technique and merged with Hu Po, so Yi naturally left his body. She was smart enough to hide at the first opportunity, not making a move at all. She knew that with her own strength, she wouldn't be able to play a decisive role in a battle like this. So, she only made a move at the critical moment to harass Lu Yueme. The effect was remarkable. Even if the spell arts she used didn't cause any harm to Lu Yueme, just distracting Lu Yueme for a moment was a great help to Lu Yi. The most obvious result was that Lu Yi instantly approached within 10 meters of Lu Yueme. The same scene repeated itself as before. Both of them activated their spells and saber auras. Lu Ye's figure moved and Lu Yueme retreated quickly. However, they could only watch as the distance between them narrowed. This time, they were closing in even faster than before. Although the battle didn't last long, Lu Yi had slowly adapted to his increased speed and strength, and was also slowly adapting to Lu Yueme's attack rhythm. This was very dangerous for a magic attribute cultivator. While Lu Yi was running, Yi didn't remain idle either. She continued to use her spell arts to attack Lu Yueme from afar, not hoping to achieve much, but simply to distract Lu Yueme and consume some of her strength. Lu Yi closed in again and slashed down with his saber, causing the light protecting Lu Yueme's body to dim. Even if it was a spirit artifact, in the end, it was still an inanimate object and had a limit to how much it could withstand. Lu Ye's current saber strike was so terrifying that such a spirit artifact could block it once, twice, or even 3 times, but it absolutely couldn't block his endless attacks. The 2 figures were sent flying again. A trace of panic flashed across Lu Yueme's eyes, and she no longer had the confidence she had before. She suddenly realized that if the situation continued to develop like this, the situation would become very bad for her. Her spirit artifact wouldn't last much longer. Perhaps it would shatter under the next blow, or perhaps even the next. Once her spirit artifact shattered and Lu Yi closed in on her, the consequences would be unimaginable. Although she still had other spirit artifacts she could use, how many slashes could they withstand from Lu Ye's saber? Such a terrifying saber strike wasn't something a second-order divine sea realm weapon cultivator could wield. She had to break this stalemate before that happened. She couldn't let her opponent continue to display his strength. A trace of sorrow surged from the depths of her heart. She never thought that one day she would be forced to this extent by a weapon cultivator whose cultivation was 5 minor realms lower than hers. They were both cultivators, so how could he be so monstrous? Before the battle began, she realized that she couldn't let Lu Yi continue to grow, because sooner or later, he would have the strength to threaten her, and with his terrifying cultivation speed, it wouldn't be long before that happened. But after the battle began, she realized that this person already had the strength to threaten her. If they were in the outside world, she would have already fled. Even if there was only the slightest risk, she would still prioritize her own safety. But this was the battle stage, an enclosed environment. The you die, I die rule cut off all her delusions. Since that was the case, she would fight to the death. Lu Yueme's offensive suddenly weakened, making it easier for Lu Yi to rush forward. He instinctively felt that there was a trap, because the battle had only been going on for 30 breaths. Lu Yueme, a 7th-order Divine Sea Realm cultivator, shouldn't have weakened so quickly. Such a change was clearly intentional. She was pretending to be weak to the enemy. He was sure that Lu Yueme was scheming something, but he didn't know what she wanted to do. He didn't have time to think too much. In a life-or-death battle, hesitation was the most taboo. Using 2 of his trump cards at the same time consumed a lot of his strength, so he had to end this battle quickly. The longer it dragged on, the more disadvantageous it would be for him. Please enter the latest update in your browser. Go to the Essence Book Pavilion to view. Providing you with the latest update of Great God Momo's Human Race Great Sage. In order to be able to view the latest updates of this book next time, please be sure to keep your bookmark well. Chapter 1074 Battle Stage. You Die, I Live. Read for free.